Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
I wish you never to know trouble and sorrow. Maria cried too. The bride's aunt, thank you, smiled Molly. I'm glad that I finally got out of my aunt's care. She didn't like her not young husband. In fact, she was a little afraid of Robert. He was rude and irascible, but he didn't show any aggression to the young bride. Rather, on the contrary, treated her reverently, as if to a porcelain doll, which could at any moment fall and break. The girl at first did not want to hear about Robert's feelings. 2 years ago, she came to work in his small firm, the only one in a provincial town. The man immediately drew attention to the beautiful young employee, and literally from the first day did not give her a pass. At some point, Molly even wanted to quit, although she knew that it is unlikely to find a good job in her specialty elsewhere. And then an aunt intervened, who had been raising Molly since she was 8 years old. At one time, Maria formalized guardianship over her niece. The girl's parents led a dissolute lifestyle. First, her mother ran away from the city, leaving the girl to her alcoholic father, who was soon imprisoned for life for a serious crime. Molly wanted to take her to an orphanage, but in the fate of the girl intervened a native aunt. On the father's side, Maria was not at all guided by kinship feelings for Molly. She was motivated by self-interest. Molly was left with her father's apartment, which the aunt stole. The woman put the apartment in order and safely rented for many years, and after she reached adulthood, persuaded her to sell the apartment and invest the money in the construction of a common house. We are one big and friendly family. We will sell your apartment, start building a spacious house, and then sell ours. And with the proceeds, we will leave our new house with beautiful furniture and buy a car. Aunt Maria persuaded me. By virtue of her young age and without the character of achievement, agreed to the apartment. It was quickly sold, but the construction of the house has not started. We have to wait a little, the aunt said. The situation in the country is unstable right now. We will wait for better times and build a house. Thus, the dwelling was left not only without an apartment, but also without a propiska. The aunt categorically refused to register her niece, arguing that she would have to pay even more money for utilities. Having learned that the director of the company where Molly works shows a lot of attention to her, Maria, as off the chain, snapped day and night, pestered her niece with her moralizing. She tried to reason the girl, explaining that such a chance can fall only once in a lifetime. Just try to quit such a good job. I'll throw you out on the street, the woman once threatened. I've spent 12 years raising you, feeding you, clothing you. Where's the gratitude? Realizing that it is better to live a quiet life with an unloved but wealthy man than to endure the endless scandals of Aunt Maria. Molly was forced to agree to marry Robert. Employees discouraged the girl, asking her not to do anything stupid, because their chief had terrible rumors. People said that Robert had already had 2 wives, that he was a tyrant and a pervert. Both of the man's previous wives had gone to a madhouse. It was as if after what had happened, the man had sold everything and moved to live in their small town. Molly realized that this was just another gossip and fiction of the locals, who often liked to invent some creepy story about a new person who came to live in their provincial town. Thank you all for your wishes and congratulations. You can have fun until morning, and it's time for me and my young wife to rest, Robert announced, rising from the table. Shall we stay a little longer? Shyly asked the victorious girl. It's so much fun here. I don't want our party to end so quickly. Don't worry, my dear. I'll make you such a holiday at home that you'll remember for the rest of your life, laughed the man. Let's go to the car. Robert insistently hugged the girl and almost forcefully led her outside. Only now Molly realized that she had done something stupid. She wasn't ready for a family relationship with this strange man. She wanted to turn around and run back to her house. She didn't have a home, though, and her aunt was unlikely to let her in. Come in, don't be shy. You are the mistress of this house now, Robert said, showing her the spacious living room. This is where we will receive guests. In that far room we'll make a nursery in time. And over there is our bedroom. The man pointed to a room at the end of the hallway. Go take a bath. Then I'll show you our family nest." Molly blushed and lowered her head. But there was nothing to do. Robert was her husband, and she was obliged to fulfill her marital duty. The girl stood in the shower stall for a long time under the cool stream of water. She does not know how much time had passed, but an insistent knock on the door quickly brought her back to reality. "I'm on my way," Molly shouted. "Turn the water off faster." "I'm tired of waiting," Robert shouted irritably. At that moment, Molly wanted to fall through the ground. She had never felt such shame in her life. Coming out of the bath, she saw her husband at the door. "Darling, let's go quickly. I have everything ready," smiled the man. Molly entered the room and lost speech from surprise and fear. The room had a muted basement light. There was no furniture in it at all except for a huge metal bed. Looking into the family bed, the girl turned pale. The whole bed was covered in weighty chains, and handcuffs lay in the middle. "What is this?" Stammering, the girl asked, realizing that she had fallen into the clutches of a mentally ill man. "You'll like my prankster," Robert said darkly, picking up a leather whip from the floor. "No, you're crazy," shouted the girl, holding out from the room. "Halt," roared the man, rushing to catch up with his young spouse. Molly jumped outside in just slippers and a terry cloth robe, deftly cut through the high fence, and ran without a backward glance to wherever she was going. She wanted to get home quickly, to complain to her aunt about what had happened to her. She reached Maria Genadievna's house far past midnight. Molly had to walk through yards and alleys. The passers-by looked away from the girl in the white coat, and some laughed openly, pointing their fingers at her. Seeing Robert's cars near her aunt's yard, Molly huddled near a neighbor's tree. "Don't worry, Robert. As soon as she shows up, I'll call you right away. Those bastards. Who'd have thought? She'll come back to you anyway. I won't even let her on my doorstep. The woman has ruined the whole neighborhood." "No, dear Maria. Please let Molly in and call me." "So she can't hear you. I'll be right over. I love my wife very much. She's too young to realize her happiness," Robert said calmly. "As you wish," said the woman, softened his tone. "Here, so to speak, a little financial help." "Always ready to help dear relatives," said Robert, counting the bills. "Thank you, Robert. You spoil me." Maria smiled, tucking the money into his pocket. Molly sighed heavily, realizing that she could not go to her aunt. Tears came to her eyes. She didn't think that her own person would sell her out so easily in utter hopelessness and despair. She found her way around the nighttime city. She didn't care what passers-by thought when they looked at her, nor did she see any passers-by. The night streets were completely empty, and the lights in the windows had long since gone out. She looked longingly at the dark windows of the houses. Happy people, she thought bitterly. They have a roof over their heads, and even that has been taken away from me. Feverishly wondering what she should do next, the girl reached the railroad station. Molly wanted to get far away from this city, but as without documents, money, and slippers and a robe, where could she go in such a form? Sitting down on a bench, the girl began to wait for something. She didn't know anything herself. Soon dawn was running behind the three. Molly woke up from her bitter thoughts when she heard a noise behind her. Seeing a young woman who was sweeping the street, rejoiced. "Excuse me," said the girl softly, approaching the janitor. "I found myself in a difficult position. Do you think it's easy for me?" smirked the woman, resting on the girl with a heavy breath. "I can't help you. I'm not asking for money. Maybe you could lend me some clothes," Molly asked. "She's gone." The woman was indignant. "You think I have a trunk full of clothes at home and nothing to wear? Get out of here, or I'll call the police." Molly stepped away from the woman, realizing that she was unlikely to help. When she heard the signal of the approaching train, she went to the platform. Going into an empty carriage, sat at the window. The girl, with indifference and a look, flashed in the window native town. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew that she would hardly ever return to this town. "Look out, the doors are closing." She heard Molly through her sleep and opened her eyes. The carriage was already filled with hundreds of passengers. None of them paid attention to the girl. Everyone was busy with their own worries. School years came to mind. When then they all the class came to this monastery on an excursion. Then the creative life of the nuns seemed to her a dull and boring existence. She did not understand how she could bury herself alive in the walls of a sullen monastery. A salutary thought instantly came into her head. She was now very jealous of the quiet, safe life that reigned in the monastery. When she saw the train approaching the station, she rushed to the exit. Molly had been walking for an hour or two through the forest. She was terribly thirsty. It was very damp and cold. With increasing frequency, clouds overhead said that it would soon start to rain. The strength was leaving the girl. At some point, she thought she was lost. But when she saw a high fence and the gap of huge trees, she was glad. Approaching the iron gate, Molly pressed the bell button. Behind the gate, there was complete silence. It seemed that there was absolutely no one there. Only after about 10 minutes, heavy footsteps were heard. "What do you want?" asked a sullen old woman. She opened the heavy wicket. "Please help me," in desperation cried Molly, throwing herself on her knees in front of the woman. "Come in," the nun said in a rough voice, looking at the girl with interest. "How are you running from whom?" asked Nancy. A woman of no particular age was looking at Molly with an inquisitive gaze. She tried to look into her soul to understand who stood before her. The girl wanted to start a story about her hard life, about her misfortunes, but the lump in her throat prevented her from uttering a single sound. Shuttered Molly silently cried, "Okay, I see, you need to rest. Afterwards we will talk calmly," said Nancy, instructing the assistant to take the girl away. Mother Nancy led Molly to the far cell, which was behind a similar courtyard. She pointed to the door to the shower room and threw some clothes on the narrow bed. I'll tell them to bring you some soup. By evening you can rest. You'll be called for evening prayers," the woman said gruffly. Molly was not used to being in a closed space among gray walls. The atmosphere in the monastery was very depressing. Everyone around was silent and sullen, as if wearing some kind of mourning. I did not like this attitude and way of life. After all, she is a cheerful person. But in this situation, this monastery was her saving grace. The girl did not want to return to the worldly life under any pretext. There was too much cruelty and injustice there. "What do you want to do next, Molly?" asked the abbess, listening carefully to the girl. "I understood correctly that you have no relatives or close friends. There is only one aunt, and she turned out to be a traitor. It is scary to imagine what some people are capable of for the sake of money," Molly said sadly. "Well, stay with us for now," agreed Nancy. "I want to become a nun. I have nothing to do in the world," the girl said confidently. Wait, with that the woman finally grinned. "Not everything is as quick and easy as you think." 3 months had passed since Molly's escape. The girl had gotten used to the unusual way of life. She has become a novice, and there is an abbess attached to the convent. Nancy said it was too early to think about tonsure. It is not a game. Before you take such an important step, you should think very carefully. You're a young and very beautiful girl. Moreover, you came to us not out of love for the Most High, but out of despair. We are not persecuting you. You are a good man. Live at the monastery. And time will sort things out," said the wise woman. Molly's duties included cleaning the refectory, helping in the kitchen, and buying groceries. At first, the girl was afraid to go outside the monastery, but after realizing that the monastery is far from her hometown, in a nearby village, no one knew her. She started going to the market once a week. Molly needs to pick raspberries for the winter in the forest. Take Mother Nancy as a helper and go to the forest. There was a difference. Good, the girl was glad that she had a chance to walk in the woods and breathe a breath of freedom. "I can go by myself." "No." "Will you two go together?" "It's not right for a young girl to wander the woods alone," objected the old woman. Walking through the woods, Molly became sad. He remembered his childhood years when he and his grandfather used to go to the forest for mushrooms. Grandfather taught his granddaughter how to distinguish a mushroom from a grape, how to navigate by the sun. The happiest years of her life were behind her. Then there was life with her aunt, constant reproaches, scandals. Then it got really bad. Tired of Nancy's constant muttering. Molly deliberately left the woman behind. In the woods, she navigated like a fish in water, so she was not afraid to get lost. Leaving the house, Malenkova began to collect white berries in a large bough. Hearing behind her back the quiet crunch of dry twigs, smirked. You can't hide from this Nancy anywhere. You were watching the subsoil. I thought she'd gone ahead, Molly thought. I'm sorry. The girl heard a hoarse, male voice behind her back and turned pale with fear. You just do not be frightened. I did not mean any harm. Turned around Molly and saw a young man. To put it mildly, his appearance was not very good. He looked infirm and sickly. Don't be afraid, said the guy's lips in front of her ears. Perhaps you have a sip of water. Yes, said Molly, holding out a small flask of cold medieval water. Are you lost? The stranger greedily pounced on the water, taking several large yearlings. I stopped. I'm sorry, I almost drank your entire supply. Keep the tinfoil. Do you need any help? There's a monastery nearby. I can bring you, the girl offered. I need help, but I can't go out to people. The boy said. Are you from the convent? Yes, I live at the convent. Molly said quietly, realizing that she was dealing with either a psycho or a criminal. I'll go. There are a lot of us here. I'm enough now. The girl lied. Are you scared? Don't be. Help me, please, in desperation, asked the boy. What's your name? I'm Alex. Molly introduced herself to the girl. Molly, be a friend. Help me. You don't have to tell anyone that you saw me well. I wasn't even thinking of telling anyone, Molly assured her. I need some clothes, a t-shirt and pants, Alex explained. The guy's clothes were really in bad shape. His shirt and pants were torn to shreds. There was talk of him not spending the first day in the woods. I'm also really hungry, lowering my head, Alex. I can bring food a little later, the girl explained. With men's clothes is more difficult. Tomorrow I'll be at the market. I could run to the store, but I have no money of my own. No problem with money. The guy rejoiced, handing Molly a few bills. When it starts to get dark, approach about 5 meters to the left of the gate. I cannot go out. Already threw the groceries over the fence. I'll try to bring clothes tomorrow around the same time. Where can I find you? Molly asked. I'll be waiting for you. Thank you. You'll learn me a lot, smiled Alex. I have to go. See you tomorrow. The girl heard that Nancy was looking for her and hurried away. All the way back, she thought about the strange guy. He looked like a decent, normal person. But why was he hiding in the woods, and who was he hiding from? There were only questions in my head that had no answers yet. Having come with Nancy and 2 other persons to the market, Molly waited for the right moment to slip away from her companions. Getting to the clothing store unnoticed, she quickly bought the necessary items. She spent the whole night thinking about the strange stranger in the forest. On the one hand, felt sorry for the guy. Molly, of all people, knew what it was like to run and hide, without any support. On the other hand, Alex was a concern. There's no telling who he really is or who he's hiding from in the woods. After lunch, Molly and Nancy went to pick raspberries again. In the woods, do not run, gave instructions. Nancy yesterday ran 2 hours out of the half-empty, came after me to walk. I know some good places. All right. The girl humbly agreed. She carried clothes, bread and water for Alex in a basket. She was afraid that Nancy would not notice, so she tried to keep away from the observant old woman. Molly slowly trailed behind her, stepping aside the small one where the boy was supposed to be waiting. Hello, Alex whispered quietly, appearing from behind the thicket. I was afraid you wouldn't come. How could I? You're waiting, and there's no one to help you in this face but me. Here are some clothes and some food. Molly pulled the boy a small package. Thank you, you are my guardian angel, rejoiced Alex. Let me help you pick raspberries. Come on, I'll show you a place where there are a lot of them. In half an hour, we'll have a basket full of them. Let's go. The girl agreed. She felt easy and calm around this stranger. Alex told all the way that in this country of the forest raspberries had already sung, and in the other one they would ripen in about a week. Alex, who are you hiding from? The girl asked bluntly. She watched the guy greedily devouring bread and drinking water. Just promise me that you won't be afraid of me, he asked. I promise, Molly assured him. I escaped from the colony. You probably won't believe it, but I was convicted of crimes I didn't commit. What's more, I had nothing to do with it at all. It's a serious crime, and I'd have to sit for a very long time. The boy said seriously. How is that possible? How could the court sentence an innocent man? Molly wondered. How did you escape? Is it really that easy? You are very naive, Alex smiled. It's obvious that you know life very badly. And what's next? Will you sit in the woods all your life? They will find you anyway. I need to prove my innocence, and no one else can do that. First, we need to find one person and make him confess to perjury, the boy explained. How long have you been here? About a week. Explored this forest up and down about 2 kilometers. There's a small swamp from here. The water's more or less clear. You can swim in it, but you can't drink it. It tastes bitter. And on the other side, I built myself a small tent. It is difficult to call this structure reliable, but for the night you can shelter, the guy smiled. Alex stared at the beautiful girl. He could not understand what she was doing in the monastery. Gaining courage, he decided to ask Molly. You and I had a frank conversation. Tell me, how long have you lived here? A few months. I was sheltered once in this monastery. I came there in my slippers and bathrobe. Hungry, scared, barely able to stand on my feet from fatigue. Molly said cheerfully, remembering the bad times in her life. Did someone hurt you? Alex turned pale, clenching his fists. He had a great sympathy for the girl at first sight. Perhaps only those people who are deeply unhappy themselves are capable of it. Persecuted, and needing the support of help and love. He wanted to protect her. Molly looked very defenseless, fragile. Molly thought for a while and then told him all about herself. He listened in silence. It's amazing how one person can have so many problems and troubles all at once. It's a shame I'm on the run now. I would like to see your aunt and the man, to explain what is good and what is bad. But nothing, there will be a holiday on our street. Molly, what are you going to do next? Do you really plan to? Lock you up in a convent for the rest of your life? Yes, I've given it a lot of thought. It is, of course, boring and tedious there. But on the other hand, the monastery has an atmosphere of peace. You don't have to think about tomorrow. You don't have a problem to worry about at all. I hope that someday I will take the tonsure and become a nun. The girl said calmly, Molly, Molly. In the distance came the irritated voice of Mother Nancy. It's not time, the girl said fearfully. God forbid we should be seen here. In the evening, come to the same spot by the fence. I'll drop a bag of groceries. Thanks, Molly. I'll see you tomorrow. Will you come with Hope? Asked the guy. I don't know. If you send for raspberries there again, please come. I will be very much waiting. Asked Alex. You are like a rainbow ray appeared in my gray life. Looking at you makes me want to live. Molly took a basket full of raspberries and quickly went to Nancy. All night she prayed for Alex. For some reason the girl felt the hard fate of the guy and wanted everything to be well with him. In the morning she wanted to see Alex again. Molly liked talking to this handsome man. She liked listening to his pleasant voice, seeing his smile. The girl didn't realize yet that she had fallen in love with Alex. We're going for raspberries today, she asked Nancy. No, we've already picked enough. We've got enough for the whole winter. Today we're having a general cleaning, said the woman, Molly sullenly. She didn't think she'd be so upset about not seeing her boyfriend again. Her heart ached for him because he would be waiting. Sitting alone in the woods, hungry and without water, the girl went back to her cell and began to think feverishly about how to get out of the monastery unnoticed, to take the boys some food and say goodbye, to wrap the bread and water in a bundle. Molly crouched by the window of the cell. She didn't know how she would get out of the monastery unnoticed in broad daylight, but she still hoped she would succeed. At 12 o'clock, the girl heard the noisy clanking of a heavy gate. A large truck drove into the courtyard up to the top, loaded with metal beds, hiding a bundle. Molly went out into the yard. Why are you trying to get underfoot? Nancy asked in a displeased tone, instructing the workers where to bring the furniture in, go to the kitchen and help. Molly said nothing to the old woman. Bypassing the truck carefully, she found herself at the open gate. She doesn't know what she's doing. She ran into the woods. Alex was sitting next to Olenek on the very spot where they parted yesterday. Molly. The guy smiled, handing the girl a handful of white raspberries. Take it, I picked the biggest berries especially for you. I was afraid you wouldn't come anymore. I came to say goodbye, Molly said quietly. Here, take some bread and water. Molly, come with me. I realize that I am in an unenviable position, but I promise to do everything I can to get out of this situation as soon as possible. You'll never regret trusting me. Where are we going? To that shack you built for the campground? No, Alex, I can't do that to the abbess. Nancy trusted me, she gave me shelter. And then I'm not going back to the worldly life. It's too troublesome. I'll wait until tomorrow to give you plenty of time to think. If you come, I'd be delighted. And if you don't, I don't know. I'd be sorry to see our relationship end before it's begun. I can't hide in the woods anymore. I wanted to leave yesterday, but I couldn't. I wanted to see you. Molly didn't listen to the boy any further and quickly ran back. She wanted to get to her hiding place. She wanted to hide and hide from all worldly temptations. Abbess Nancy was right. It's too soon for her to take her vows. She's not ready to devote herself fully to the ministry. Gentlemen, Molly was lucky. The truck hadn't left yet, and the gates to the convent were open. Stealthily, moving into her cell, the girl fell on the bed and silently sobbed. Where are you? A furious Nancy entered the cell. What's the matter with you? Why do I have to run around, looking for you all over the grounds? Where have you been? Molly didn't answer anything and remained lying on the bed, hugging her pillow. I realized the situation was getting out of control and rushed to the abbess for help. Nancy silently listened to the woman, and after a little thought, ordered her to leave Molly alone. She would deal with the stroppy girl herself. What's going on with you? Molly. Nancy entered the cell, closing the door tightly behind her. Molly was not surprised to see the abbess. Knew Nancy would be happy to complain about her, looking into Nancy's bright, kind eyes. Couldn't tell a lie. It seemed to her that this woman could read minds with ease. Could see right through her. I think I'm in love. It has never happened to me before. She whispered softly. I'm a sinner. There's no excuse for me. No, sweet love, it's not a sin. It's the brightest feeling that gives our lives meaning. Wait, who could you be in love with? Nancy wondered, looking intently at Molly. We met him in the village. He works at the market, Molly lied. She realized that the abbess would not accept or approve of the story of a fugitive criminal. Do you want to leave? The woman asked bluntly. I don't know. I'm scared. I can't hold you. And I don't want to. I want you to know that you can always come to me for help. I've gotten used to you over these past few months, and I care about your fate. Anyway, I don't see the point of your staying in our monastery any longer. Will you come and see me as you mean to? I'll give you a small sum from our fund. It will be enough for the first time, and then learn to live on your own, Nancy said calmly. Thank you, Molly smiled and hugged the woman. The girl quickly gathered herself after the abbess left. Her support was the impetus to make an important decision in her life. She really wanted to dedicate her life to serving God. But apparently, desire alone was not enough. A person needs strong arguments to make such a drastic change in their life. To be happy, Molly pronounced Nancy. Blessings, girl. Remember, you're going to have a tough time there. Try to learn to cope with difficulties and problems. This is the main condition for surviving in the world. Thank you, Molly said, wiping away the traitorous tears. Left alone, the girl was a little confused, feeling a strange sense of freedom and independence. For 19 years of her life, she was not used to making decisions on her own. First, her aunt did it for her, and then Abbess Nancy. Alex called the girl, approaching the raspberries. Molly, have you made up your mind? The guy smiled, hugging the girl in joy. I'm glad. You did the right thing. Where are we going now? Molly smiled. First, we need to get out of this forest, although I am very used to it and feel like a forest master, laughed the guy. Let's go, stretched out her hand the girl. I know the way out. Alex held Molly's hand tightly, as if he was afraid that his happiness would slip away from him as quickly as it appeared. They didn't know what was waiting for them beyond the forest, but they sincerely believed that together they would find it easier and easier to overcome all the hardships of life. "Where are we going?" Molly asked. "We have to stop somewhere. Honestly, I'm scared for you." Every man in uniform was frightened. "I'm scared to imagine being all alone again." "Don't be. It's been a while since I escaped. The manhunt has long since subsided, and I don't think anyone's looking for me in this village. Do you need to rent an apartment? It's better if the landlord doesn't see me. I'll give you the money and tell you what to say. You'll manage without me." Alex smiled. "I'll try," Molly said decisively. Young people were sitting in a cafe, drinking coffee with cakes. They planned their further actions. Molly felt very light. Near Alex, she had the impression that she knew him all her life. The guy seemed reliable and confident. She didn't know what he was in for, but for some reason she trusted every word he said. Having received clear instructions, the girl went in search of accommodation, having chosen a nice apartment on the outskirts of the town in the quiet district. The woman paid the landlady for 2 months and took the keys. "Are you going to live by yourself?" the woman asked. "I don't really care, but I still want to know if we can." Molly lied. "He's finishing his business and he'll be here soon." "That's what I thought," smiled the landlady. "The main thing is to keep quiet and keep order. The rest is none of my business." "Don't worry, we won't give you any trouble," Molly assured her. After seeing the landlady off, the girl followed Alex. She was a little uncomfortable being alone with a man she didn't know very well. At some point, Molly regretted that she had acted rashly, leaving the monastery into the unknown. But seeing the bright, pure look of the guy calmed down. Once in the closed space, Alex nervously paced around the room, always looking out the window. "You're scared," Molly realized. "Maybe we should move farther away." "It's not that I'm scared. It's just nervous, I guess." "You know, it was much more secure in the woods," the guy smiled. "Well, let's not talk about sad things. You rest. And I'll fry potatoes for us, my specialty recipe." "Alex, maybe you can tell me more about yourself. I know absolutely nothing about you." "Okay, let's go to the kitchen and talk about it." "I'm an orphan. I was raised in an orphanage. Who am I and where do I come from?" "I don't know. I was dropped off at the city hospital when I was 3 months old. Just recently, I thought I'd finally gotten lucky. I met someone I thought was pretty good. Alex became my best friend and mentor, gave me a job, a place to live, support, and hope for a bright future. And then he took it all away, taking away the only thing I owned. My freedom. Who is this man?" "Are you talking in riddles?" Molly asked. "I met him by chance at a friend's wedding. That same night, he offered me a great job as a freight forwarder. Alex headed one of the largest trucking firms in the city. My duties included escorting vans over long distances. Who would have thought he'd be capable of such sneakiness?" "You were set up?" Molly guessed. "Yeah, one time they found a whole shipment of guns instead of bricks in one of the trucks. You see, my boss pretended not to know where it came from. Said it was my doing. And he said and the rest of us confirmed that everyone went straight against you. 2 paid witnesses were enough, but the others just kept quiet. Who would want to lose their job? And there was no way to prove your innocence. As you can see, the chief's got his hands full in this town. He's a big, successful businessman, a respected man in town. And what am I? An orphan with nothing to show for it." "Yeah," Molly shook her head. "How are you going to justify yourself? You think your boss will come to his senses and admit it was his doing?" "No, of course not. I made friends with a good man in the zone. We had a lot in common. William was raised in the same orphanage as me. True, he is 15 years older, but still in that place we seemed to be close to each other. We had the same caretakers and the same memories. He's the one who put you on the run?" "Not only did he, but he helped me. In fact, he promised me he'd help me nail my old boss to the wall. William's not the last man in criminal circles, and he doesn't throw words around. How'd he help you if you spent so much time in the woods? Why didn't you run to him?" The girl was surprised. "Unfortunately, things didn't go as we planned. They were waiting for me in one direction, but I had to run in the opposite direction. No one expected that I would be caught so quickly, and the dogs would pick up the trail. I lost my way and ran. Wherever I could see. What now? Molly didn't understand. We can't just sit here indefinitely. Everything's gonna be okay. Alex hastened to reassure her. First, we need to find William. And then we need to find Robert Kolosov. According to the latest information, he disappeared from the city. After all this fuss, he sold everything and left. Like you said, Molly went pale. Robert, why are you surprised? Have you heard anything about him? I have. I suspect my pervert husband and your abuser are the same person. He showed up in our town 2 years ago with a lot of money, started a trucking company right away. That's a twist. Alex whistled. Fate sent you to me. We need to go to William and seriously deal with our common offender. I'm very glad I met you, Molly smiled. At first, I was scared out of my mind. Then I saw your eyes and realized that a man with such a kind gaze couldn't hurt a woman. Thank you. It's nice to know someone believes in you. You know, until I met you, I thought I'd never make it out of the woods alive. 2 days without water. Dirty, with tattered clothes. Where could I go? They were looking for me hard at the time. If I'd gone out to the humans, I'd have been caught. You're my guardian angel. I don't believe we met by chance. Such meetings are never accidental. You were given to me by fate, seriously said the guy. Before I met you, I had nothing to live for. And now I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of the police? No, I'm scared for you. I don't think I'll survive if I can't help you in time. I thought you said William was your buddy to take care of things. Molly was worried. I hope so. As they say, the Lord willing, we'll take about another month and go to William. I know roughly where to find him, the guy said. Alex decided not to wait that long. About the monitor in the news channels of the newspaper. He realized that there was no special hunt for him. Even photos of himself nowhere to find. It's weird. Maybe they're not looking for me. There's silence everywhere. I said in bewilderment. Is that possible? Molly was surprised. I don't know, but the fact remains. Today we'll probably get ready, and tomorrow we'll go to the big city. It's easier to get lost out there, and I'd like to settle this matter sooner rather than later. I'm tired of running, tired of being startled by every sound and rustle. What do you say? I will always support you. When Alex arrived in town, he was a little confused. The young people decided to take a cab and go straight there. The administrator of the bar smiled politely at Alex Molly, but gave no information about his master. If you need him urgently, you wait. William will stop by later in the evening. The young men took the table at the end of the hall and waited patiently. William did not wait long. Apparently, the receptionist informed the man about the visit of strange guests. Alex is alive, the stocky bald man said, hugging his friend. Who's that with you? William wondered, looking at Molly. Molly is my guardian angel, for whom I would tear anyone. The boy said proudly. I see. Wonderful girl. I approve. William smiled, kissing Molly's hand. The girl felt awkward in the company of a man she didn't know very well. She didn't like William's scrutinizing stare. More recently, after she had spent a few months in a convent, she had learned to be a bit of a judge of people. William did not inspire confidence in her at all. So we're standing in the middle of a bar, and we're on our way to my place. Are you my guests tonight? Not just tonight, said William, heading for the exit. Sash, do we have to stay at his place? Molly asked quietly. Don't be afraid of him, smiled the guy. William is only formidable in appearance, but in general, he is a kind man. Trusting the life of Alex. The girl calmed down a little. After all, she trusted him and was not afraid of anything around him. William brought the guests to the country house and said that they could live here for a while. After dinner, Molly went to rest, and Alex decided to talk to a friend. It's like a soap opera. William was surprised. You meet a girl in the woods who turns out to be the wife of your enemy. If I didn't know all the circumstances, I'd think it was a setup. But nothing, as they say, is for the best. We'll take care of your Robert. I don't need a couple days to get my affairs in order. Then I'll take care of you. In the meantime, Molly, you rest up. You can go fishing. There's a river nearby. Thank you, William. I'm glad I got to you safely. To be honest, there was no hope of shining anymore. I didn't think you were alive either. Who'd have thought things would get so twisted and they'd be looking for you right away? Well, it's all over now. I'm off. You guys come by tomorrow at 7 o'clock. It's my anniversary party. William invited me. Maybe we shouldn't go out on the town too much, asked Alex. Don't worry, no one will be looking for you in my place. They don't come to my place, grinned the man. You respect me, and you stole yours. Maybe a little. Molly liked the temporary shelter. There was silence all around. The house was located a few kilometers from the nearest village, away from prying eyes. It was quiet and cozy. Tomorrow we're going to Williams for the anniversary. I don't know what to get him. I think he has everything. And we don't have much money. Alex was thinking, maybe we shouldn't go, it's not close. And you better not show your face in the city, Molly warned. William asked that we respect his car tomorrow will send for us, explained the guy. The next day, the young people went into town, picking out a gift at an antique shop. They drove to the bar. Guests had already gathered, filling almost all the space in the hall. The birthday boy sat in the center of the table, happily accepting the congratulations of friends. Thank you for coming. William approached Alex with Molly. By the way, a man should be arriving soon who can help us get in touch with Robert. He has a lot of influence over that man. Are you seriously hoping that Alex will plead guilty and go to jail instead of me? Alex was surprised. No, of course, it's impossible. But he is quite capable of shifting the blame to someone else. Anyway, let's wait for my buddy and talk about it. William left, but soon returned with a frightened, pale face. Alex immediately realized that something serious had happened. What asked anxiously? I don't know exactly, but something I don't like very much. Those two types at the bar try to go out through the kitchen into the yard. Molly, let her stay here for now. I guess I was wrong to invite you for an ear, William whispered. Alex shifted his gaze to the steamy counter and realized that William was right. The two men seemed to be chatting casually behind the bar, but it was obvious to the naked eye that they were unusual owl regulars. Do not be afraid of anything, whispered Alex, frightened Molly, and kissed the girl, went on cotton legs towards the kitchen. The guests were having fun, not paying any attention to the people around them. Only William and Molly froze, watching Alex. The guy didn't have time to reach the kitchen. Several people rushed to him from all sides. The guy was deftly laid on the floor by the snap of handcuffs on his wrists. Alex, screamed Molly desperately. Let him go. Don't touch him. Hush, whispered William. Or do you want to go with him? We won't help Alex now. We'll only hurt him. Molly covered her face with her hands and sobbed. The thing she feared most had happened. She had lost him, and this time it would be for a long time. How could it be? Why? Who have we wronged so much? I prayed for him day and night and whispered for him. Molly girl, calm down. Come with me now. You should be alone for a while to think and come to your senses. Tears Alex will not help, William said calmly, taking the girl to the back rooms. The man escorted Molly into the kitchen, nodding for her to come to them. Yes, William. What can I do for you? Asked the ruddy-faced woman with the good-natured face. Jenna, take care of my guests. Please calm the girl down and make sure she doesn't go anywhere. Basically, you take charge of her with your head. Ordered by a man. Okay, don't worry. I will anticipate, assured Jenna. After the owner had left, the cook locked the door to the street, just in case. The woman knew her master's temper, and if the girl, God forbid, ran away, she'd be in trouble. Who are you? What happened in there? Jenna nodded at the hall, realizing that the girl had no intention of making conversation. She took out a bottle of wine from the nightstand. Drink. Molly ordered Molly that French wine helps better than any sedative. Molly unexpectedly took in her hands a glass with dark cherry liquid and drank it in a gulp. Good girl, good for you. Praised Jenna, filling the glass again. Now calm down and tell me everything. It's a long story, Molly said sadly. It's okay. We're in no hurry. They'll be out till morning anyway. It'll make it easier for your daughter to talk. Molly told the nice woman everything. Jenna was right and did feel better for a little while, but only for a moment, realizing that Alex was gone. The girl next to her cried again. That's quite a story. Poor girl. Who would have guessed that you would be in so much trouble? Jenna shook her head. What's next? What are you going to do? I don't know anything at all, said Molly. All hope is in William. Take my advice, honey, you can't trust anyone, especially not these people, the cook whispered, nodding toward the hall where the party was in full swing. Remember, after all, if your own aunt sold you what you want from strangers, thank you. You remembered you threw Molly out with your nose. Stop whining. You don't have to show anyone your weakness. There are very few people who are genuinely willing to feel sorry for you. I get it, I'm sure, Molly said. Jenna took a piece of paper and a pencil. She quickly wrote her phone number and slipped it into her pocket. Just in case, just in case. William entered the kitchen, assessing the situation, winked cheerfully at the women. Calm down. Good. There's a man who was supposed to deal with his fiancée. You'll meet him. Yes, of course, Molly perked up. William led the girl into the office, where a gray-haired, intelligent man was waiting for them, nodding to the owner to leave them alone. Saying hello to Molly. My name is Victor. You're Robert's wife. The man smirked. But as a spouse. Yes, we're married, but that's about it. I had to run away from my husband right after the wedding. Tell me, will you help Alex get Robert to tell the truth? Molly asked the naive girl with hope. Victor laughed. How can I force such a powerful man to do anything against his will? But with your help, we can manipulate Robert. Don't you agree, Molly? What should I do? Molly turned pale. I'm not going back to my husband. That's out of the question. Let you first calm down a little, and tomorrow we will talk in a calm atmosphere, said Victor. Okay, agreed the girl. Molly was left alone in the office and was at a complete loss. She already realized that no one was in a hurry to rescue Alex. Everyone was busy doing their own thing, having fun, dancing quietly, yelling songs. None of those present cared about her grief. How was the conversation? William came into the study. We rescheduled it for tomorrow, the girl explained. Only we haven't agreed where we will meet, where I will look for this Victor. You won't have to look for him. He'll come himself. He'll stay with me for a while. William said in a tone that didn't tolerate objections. No, it's inconvenient. I'll get a little room. I'll be more comfortable. Molly, what room? We need to get the jar out now. We could need you at any moment. You're suggesting we run all over town looking for you. You don't think I'd do anything wrong, do you? I got a wife and a son at home. By the way, we'll tell them you're the new governess. I just fired the last one the other day. Okay, Molly agreed. A little calmed down. She wanted to trust this man because he spoke well of him. Alex considered him a best friend, almost a brother. But something told her that her gut told her that William was not at all what he wanted to seem. Molly was uncomfortable in someone else's house. William's wife, Julia, squinted at her. The woman must have thought that the new governess was her husband's mistress. He arrived with his wife around 5 o'clock, assigned one of the best rooms, and later announced that he had found a wonderful governess for his son. Julia remained silent. She didn't dare to contradict her husband. Good morning, greeted William, coming into the girl's room. How do you like the new place? Everything is fine. If something is wrong, say thank you to me right away. It's great. William, any word on Alex? Is there any way to get him some groceries and clothes? Molly asked. Don't worry about it. The guys have already done everything. Is your Alex like in a sanatorium? Loudly laughed the man. Victor is coming today. I advise you to listen to him in everything. Alex is the only one who can help. Got it. Yes, I'm ready to help him, the girl said. She really wanted it to be over quickly. Most of all, she dreamed that Alex would be acquitted and released. After all, without him, life was freezing, lost its colors. Could you please specify what my duties are? Your wife doesn't communicate with me, and your son is rude and avoidant, Molly complained. It seems strange that the governess does not leave the room and does not deal with the child. I'm so sick of her jealousy. The man got angry, and really cannot and say she has a tongue like a broomstick. In a moment, we'll tell everyone and you and Alex. And I'm already being dragged. They suspect I was the mastermind behind his escape. Anyway, just bear with me for a while. I think things will settle down soon." Molly spent half the day in the room. Toward evening, Victor finally arrived. The man was clearly agitated about something. "Hello, Molly. I've been up all night thinking about how to influence your husband," the man said. "Victor, please don't call Robert my husband. Our marriage is more of a misunderstanding, especially since I'm sure he's divorced me already." I asked, "Molly, can you tell me what I need to do?" "As far as I know, you worked at his firm." "Yes, 2 years exactly. Surely you still have friends or buddies there, right?" the man asked. "Well, in general, yes. My coworkers and I were very friendly." "We need to find out some information. Maybe it's classified, and not all the employees are aware of it. We need to get in touch with Robert's confidant. You can do that, and all this information will help to free Alex?" The girl was surprised. "Yes, but you have to blackmail him with something." "Robert is not the kind of man who will make concessions," Victor explained. "I'll do everything, at least I'll try. We had a good relationship with Robert's deputy. I'm sure David is up to date on all of his boss's business." "What exactly am I supposed to know in 3 weeks?" "He's shipping a big shipment through his firm. We need to know who the customer is. We need to know exactly when the trucks leave, the names of the drivers. What's the paperwork say they're carrying? Point of arrival, and photocopies of the documents," Victor explained. "Got it. I'll do my best." Promised Molly the impossible as well. "You must realize that this is the only way to help Alex." Victor left, leaving Molly in heavy reflection. Once again, she would have to go back to her town. We must be extremely careful not to fall into the clutches of Robert. There's a lot of important information to be gathered. But will David make contact? Would he rat out the chief? That she didn't know. Julia wandered around the house as if unaccustomed. The realization that William had brought a mistress into the house did not give calm breathing. The woman was moved to tears. She felt sorry for herself. She'd been through so much over the years, hadn't she? When was the first time William was locked up? The woman was penniless with a baby in her arms. She was struggling to make ends meet and still find a way to send packages to her husband. Then he was paroled. William changed a lot, became angry and alien. He had a lot of money almost immediately. Julia did not know what her husband was doing and was very afraid that he would be imprisoned again. He did not answer his wife's questions. He only shouted angrily that it was her business to cook shields, not to meddle in her husband's affairs. When she reached despair, the woman decided to leave her husband, who had become a complete stranger and hated her. Having learned about his wife's plans, he threatened her, advised her to sit quietly and do not interfere. Otherwise, he would have to take her to the woods, to teach her to reason. She agrees. Julia heard the conversation coming from the open door of her husband's study and lurked at the door. "Great," William rejoiced. "I knew she would do anything for that sucker. What's next? If she gets the information we need, she'll demand Alexa's release. How do we get out of this? I don't want Molly to get pissed off. And if she tells everything Robert, we will not be well," then worriedly said Victor. "She won't." William smirked. "Denka, okay, woman, she belongs in Turkey in some elite brothel. You'll organize it. You've already thought of everything and calculated everything. Well done, praise." Victor patted his buddy on the shoulder. "Of course I'll organize it. For such a beautiful girl, I also made a lot of money." Julia froze in bewilderment. She realized that she was talking about her son's new governess. The woman felt sorry for the girl. She thought that Molly was her husband's mistress, but the girl turned out to be just a pawn in some cruel game of William. Julia spent the whole night thinking about the new governess. Her husband's obsequious conversation with the assistant kept her in suspense. Until an hour ago, she had sincerely hated Molly. Now she felt very sorry for the young girl. The woman would have gladly told her everything, warned her of the danger, but she was afraid. Julia did not know what Molly's reaction would be. If the governess rushed to her husband for explanations, she would be in trouble. The woman awoke close to noon. Hearing children's laughter in the yard, she looked out the window. Molly was swinging her son on the swing, and he was laughing merrily. William's words to the brothel came to mind. Deciding to put an end to her husband's lawlessness, Julia quickly dressed and went downstairs. Molly Nikolaevna's mom is very nice. We've been practicing since morning, and now we're playing. The boy reported excitedly. Wonderful, smiled Julia. Run inside. We'll be right there with Molly. The child obediently left, and Julia approached the girl. Who are you? She asked without any preamble. I was confused, Molly. A governess. Can I see your documents, diploma, references? Molly lowered her head, not knowing what to say. She didn't know how to lie and pretend at all. Moreover, she had not expected such a conversation. William had assured her that she would have no problems in his house. It seems to me that you have no diploma or special education. I'm right, Julia asked. Yes, whispered the girl. William is helping my fiancé. Alex has big problems, and no one but your husband can solve them. Now that sounds like the truth, said the woman. It seems to me that my husband will not be able to help your husband. Alex will rather, on the contrary, will drag you into his dirty deeds. Why? Molly was surprised. He promised William of those people for whom the word means nothing. They only care about money. Lots of money. Tell me, can I be sure my husband won't find out about our conversation? The woman asked me bluntly. I won't say anything, Molly promised, not understanding anything. Yesterday I witnessed a conversation from which I realized that you must get information about Robert. I'm right. Yes, that's exactly the information that will help. Alex explained to Molly. No, Julia shook her head. No one is going to release your Alex. My husband has other plans for you. After you get what they want, you'll be sent to Turkey. Just don't think it's for a vacation. The woman smiled sadly. How? The girl couldn't believe it. Why would he want to do that? He promised. Molly was silent, remembering Julia's words that William should not take her word for it. What are you going to do? Julia asked. Think it over. And God forbid that William should find out that you know about his nefarious plans. Thank you, Julia. I really appreciate the warning. Don't worry, no one will find out, Molly assured the girl. All day long, she couldn't find a place to be. She was overcome with despair and fear. The last hopes that Alex will be able to justify collapsed. Moreover, the imaginary friend William turned out to be worse than the enemy. After all, you know the enemy by sight, and the friend, masquerading as a decent man, stabs in the back. The most unexpected moment, Molly come into the office called William. As soon as Molly arrived home, really wanted to get in the face of this private person. But pulling herself together, the girl smiled welcomingly and followed him. Victor said you were ready. There is no time to lose. The information should come to us as soon as possible. The man said, puzzled. I'm ready to go, the girl assured him. The only thing is, I hate to ask, but I have almost no money left. Found a problem, laughed the man. Of course, I will give money for your business trip. You can go tomorrow morning. You probably don't understand, do you? I need a lot of money, nonchalantly said the girl. Why? William smirked. I think that Igor will have to be paid well for this kind of information. Why would he tell me everything? There must be some interest. I see. So you're right. I'll give you the necessary amount. In the morning, Molly quietly said goodbye to Julia. She realized she was never coming back to this house and was unlikely to see William's wife again. Good luck to you. Be discreet and careful, the woman whispered. Thank you, thanked Molly. Arriving at the bus station, the girl sat down on a bench. She didn't know what to do next. This town had to go. William was not to be trifled with, and she should not try her luck. At the same time, she thought feverishly about how to help Alex. Seeing a crumpled leaf with Svetlana's phone number, she decided to talk to her. Realizing that she urgently needed someone to consult with, she dialed the number of the good-natured woman. Hello, Jenna. Do you recognize me? Of course I recognize you, Jenna said. I often think of you. I'd like to talk to you, Molly said bluntly without trouble, writing down the address. Half an hour later, Molly was sitting in the cozy kitchen, drinking tea. Yes, it's getting worse by the hour, Jenna said. I always suspected that our William was a short man. Well, to what extent? Are you very lucky to have found out what he's planning? You're right, but I don't know what to do next. I extorted some money out of him. I wanted to hire a good lawyer for Alex. But where do I find one? Well, that's no problem at all. Did you come to the right place? The woman's happy. My son is a lawyer. True, he only recently received his diploma. But I assure you, he's no worse than expensive lawyers. John is too honest and fair. He won't rest until he gets to the truth. Especially through him, you'll be able to communicate with Alex. Maybe he can tell you how to help him. Great. Molly was happy. And your Vanny will agree to take a rather hopeless case. Of course. Where will he go? Jenna winked. I'll call him right away to come over to my place. You stay with me for a couple days. I need to think things over. Molly breathed a sigh of relief. She had hope that things weren't so bad in this case. Maybe they could find a way out of the situation together. John listened carefully to the girl's story about Alex's misfortunes. What do you think, son? Asked Jenna after a long pause. Nothing encouraging so far. It's all very confusing. Plus, the escape has made things very aggravating, the boy explained. But I'll try to do my best. Do your best, son. You see, these bandits have lost all shame, said the woman. Yes, they have. Do you work for them? How many times have I asked you to leave this bar? John said reproachfully. I work in the kitchen. What difference does it make who Jenna objected to? William pays well and without delay. And especially now it's not about me. Suit yourself, Molly's boyfriend waved his hand. I will deal with your question tomorrow. As soon as there is news, I will call you. Thank you, thanked the girl. The next day, John came with the first news. The guy managed to see Alex. He asked me to tell you that he loves you very much. The guy smiled. Also asked that you not to worry. How did he cry? Molly is holding up very well. I have no intention of giving up. I had to tell him about William. He should know his enemy by sight, and we've decided to appeal. But in order to do that, we need to find some proof that he's not involved in the crime you was convicted of. John explained. How do we find it? Robert will never admit to anything in his life, Molly said. William asked you to find out about a large trucking shipment. Why would he do that? Why do you think? I think Robert's being set up or robbed. It's a situation that could play into our hands in a way Molly hasn't realized. I think Robert would be interested to know that gangsters are interested in his shipment, and he'll certainly want to know who. Tell me, what kind of man is Robert? You can talk to him. At first glance, he seems like a nice guy. Yes, you can have serious conversations with him about his business. Robert is reasonable, not violent. Often listens to outside opinions. Then I don't understand. Why did you have to run away from him? I imagined him to be a monster, the guy wondered. As a manager and businessman, he is a normal man. But in his personal life, he's not quite normal. Robert is a pervert. I didn't believe the rumors that were going around about him. I had to see for myself, the girl explained. I barely got away from him. Well done. John's come alive, son. What's so great about it? Jenna intervened. Don't scare us. I don't mean that. The kid laughed. Molly, we might find some evidence of his addiction. I don't know. I heard he's been married twice, and I think both spouses are in a psychiatric hospital. That's great. John was happy. As far as I know, he used to live and work in our town. Yeah, he had to sell up and flee the capital after the story that got Alex locked up. Molly, if I managed to get some dirt on Robert, would you be willing to meet him for a talk? Naturally, John asked in my presence. If it's with you, I'm ready. Is there anything I can do to help right now? Yes. We need to talk to his ex-wives. Find them as soon as possible. I'm seeing a classmate of mine right now. He's an investigator. I think he can help us in a few days. Molly and Vanya were on their way to Robert Ailes. They managed to get some compromising information against him. Robert was very protective of his reputation and had to agree to Molly's terms. Are you afraid? Asked John. You don't have a face on you. I'm afraid, honestly, admitted the girl. I have very bad memories of this city. First, I lost my parents here. Then there were years of abuse from my aunt. And then it got worse. Don't be afraid, I won't leave you. Sashka said I'm in charge of you. I was joking. Getting out of the cab, Molly and Vanya went to Robert's office. The secretary was very surprised to see Molly in the company of a young man. Jenka, whispered the girl, what are you doing here? Where have you been? Robert's been looking all over town for you. Even went to the police. What about yourself? Molly nodded at the door. Just got here. I say don't. We want to surprise you. Molly smirked. Robert was sitting at his desk, going through some documentation. The man was obviously puzzled about something and did not immediately see Molly and John. Hello, Robert, Molly said loudly, trying to hide her fear. The man took off his glasses and literally jumped up in his chair. It was visible to the naked eye how he was shaken with anger. John said calmly, "You better sit down and don't make any sudden movements." "Who are you?" Robert, Molly's lawyer, bellowed. "My name is John." The guy introduced himself. "What do you want?" The man didn't understand. "If you want to take something from me, you can't. Is our marriage annulled?" "No," said John. "We're having a more serious conversation. Listen to this. You'll find out." John turned on the tape recorder. "For several years of my life, Robert has made my existence a living hell." There was a shaky female voice on the tape. "Turn it off." Robert roared. "Great. Did you recognize one of your wives, Lydia? There's also a recording of a conversation with Katerina." "Turn it on," smiled John, realizing he'd hit the sore spot. "No need for a detached voice," said Robert. "How much do you want?" "We don't need money," said Molly. "Maybe you remember that Alex kid you set up and put behind bars? Then he sold everything and fled to our town." "How do you know about that?" Stunned man. "It doesn't matter. Alex should be released," Molly said decisively. Only now she realized that she was no longer afraid of this low, cowardly man. Earlier he had seemed powerful and omnipotent, but now he looked like a hunted hare. "How am I going to free Alex?" "You should at least think about what you're saying sometimes." Robert tried hard to pretend he didn't know what he was talking about. "Robert, we have something else besides the testimony of your ex-wives. We can be your enemies as well as your friends. I advise you not to be sarcastic, but to use this situation to your advantage," said John. "What are you talking about? What kind of riddles?" The man got nervous. "There are people who are very interested in your firm. They insistently want to know information about the large shipment you are sending in 2 weeks," said Molly. "Moreover, they are ready to pay a lot of money for this information." "Who are these people?" Robert asked fearfully. "Now you realize that we are worth being friends with?" Molly asked. "How do you know that?" The man didn't understand. "Never mind," said John. "Hurry up and think." "Unfortunately, we don't have any time for idle talk." Robert thought feverishly about what he should do. He realized that he should agree to Molly's terms. The man had long suspected that his firm was being hunted, but he'd never been able to find out who. "Okay, you tell me everything. I verify the information and help." Alex agreed. "No, this is not the way to solve cases," said John. "First you help Alex, and then you know the necessary information and the recorder. I advise you not to delay. Time does not stand still. We have no reason to deceive you. But you realize that in any case Alex will not be released for 2 weeks. We understand. When we see that the process is underway, then we'll tell you everything we know," John said. "Good. I'll look into the matter today," the man promised. "Leave your phone number. I will contact you as soon as there is news," said the lawyer. "We will wait," said Molly, rising from the chair. The young men left the office, leaving Robert in thought. Molly was very grateful to John for his help and support. She realized that she would hardly have influenced Robert on her own. "What do you think? He won't cheat us?" Molly asked the lawyer. "Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. There's supposed to be a new development in Alexandra's case. I'm his lawyer, and I'll be the first to know." "What am I supposed to do now?" Molly asked. "You need to lay low somewhere. You don't want to go to my mother's. It's not safe. You should stay here. We'll get an apartment for you for a couple weeks. Then we'll see. I think a lot of things will be worked out in that time. Call William, tell him everything's going according to plan. We need to put his guard down. Just passed. Don't go anywhere until I get there. Time dragged on for an agonizingly long time for Molly. The girl sat in the rented apartment, waiting for news from John. The guy called her every day, telling her how things were going. Each time she waited for long-awaited news from the lawyer. Now Molly was between two fires. She was afraid of William's revenge. After all, such people do not forgive betrayal. What do you want? The man didn't understand. If you want to take something from me, you can't. Is our marriage annulled? No, said John. We're having a more serious conversation. Listen to this. You'll find out. John turned on the tape recorder. For several years of my life, Robert has made my existence a living hell. There was a shaky female voice on the tape. Turn it off. Robert roared. Great. Did you recognize one of your wives, Lucy? There's also a recording of a conversation with Katerina. Turn it on, smiled John, realizing he'd hit the sore spot. No need for a detached voice, said Robert. How much do you want? We don't need money, said Molly. Maybe you remember that Alex kid you set up and put behind bars? Then he sold everything and fled to our town. How do you know about that? Stunned man. It doesn't matter. Alex to be released, Molly said decisively. Only now she realized that she was no longer afraid of this low, cowardly man. Earlier he had seemed powerful and omnipotent, but now he looked like a hunted hare. How am I going to free Alex? You should at least think about what you're saying sometimes. Robert tried hard to pretend he didn't know what he was talking about. Robert, we have something else besides the testimony of your ex-wives. We can be your enemies as well as your friends. I advise you not to be sarcastic, but to use this situation to your advantage, said John. What are you talking about? What kind of riddles? The man got nervous. There are people who are very interested in your firm. They insistently want to know information about the large shipment you are sending in 2 weeks, said Molly. Moreover, they are ready to pay a lot of money for this information. Who are these people? Robert asked fearfully. Now you realize that we are worth being friends with, Molly asked. How do you know that? The man didn't understand. Never mind, said John. Hurry up and think. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for idle talk. Robert thought feverishly about what he should do. He realized that he should agree to Molly's terms. The man had long suspected that his firm was being hunted, but he'd never been able to find out who. Okay, you tell me everything. I verify the information and help. Alex agreed. No, this is not the way to solve cases, said John. First you help Alex, and then you know the necessary information and the recorder. I advise you not to delay. Time does not stand still. We have no reason to deceive you. But you realize that in any case, Alex will not be released for 2 weeks. We understand. When we see that the process is underway, then we'll tell you everything we know, John said. Good. I'll look into the matter today, the man promised. Leave your phone number. I will contact you as soon as there is news, said the lawyer. We will wait, said Molly, rising from the chair. The young men left the office, leaving Robert in thought. Molly was very grateful to John for his help and support. She realized that she would hardly have influenced Robert on her own. What do you think? He won't cheat us, Molly asked the lawyer. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. There's supposed to be a new development in Alexandra's case. I'm his lawyer, and I'll be the first to know. What am I supposed to do now? Molly asked. You need to lay low somewhere. You don't want to go to my mother's. It's not safe. You should stay here. We'll get an apartment for you for a couple weeks. Then we'll see. I think a lot of things will be worked out in that time. Call William. Tell him everything's going according to plan. We need to put his guard down. Just passed. Don't go anywhere until I get there. Time dragged on for an agonizingly long time for Molly. The girl sat in the rented apartment, waiting for news from John. The guy called her every day, telling her how things were going. Each time she waited for long-awaited news from the lawyer. Now Molly was between two fires. She was afraid of William's revenge. After all, such people do not forgive betrayal. I'm going to my place, John said into the phone. Robert called yesterday. After his call, I checked the information. Anyway, the ice had broken. Molly rejoiced at the good news and prayed to God that everything would go well. The girl couldn't sit still. Walked around the apartment here and there. Looking out the window, seeing in the courtyard of the lawyer's car, rushed to open the door. "Well?" impatiently asked the girl, seeing John on the doorstep. "Everything is fine. The resumption of proceedings on newly discovered circumstances." The guy smiled. Robert kept his word. "Pack up, he's waiting for us." "I still don't understand how he did it." "And I think he admitted his involvement in the crime," the girl pondered. "No, of course, I won't go into details. But I can say with certainty that the testimony and evidence that provided your ex-husband is enough to justify Alex. Now there's another problem." "What is it?" Molly asked fearfully. "William. I have some thoughts. I need to talk to Robert. I think he'll like my proposal. That way, we can neutralize William." Robert was waiting in Molly's office with his lawyer. When he saw the young men, he was overjoyed. So they were not deceived. Robert sighed with relief. "I explained at the first meeting that we are serious people and are more your friends than your enemies," smiled John. "I'm going to have a very serious conversation with you." "Yes?" the man said, inviting those present to sit down. "Tell me, you don't hold a grudge against Molly, do you?" the boy asked bluntly. "Logically speaking, she's saving your firm." "No, I don't." The man glanced at Molly and immediately shifted his gaze. "You see, I'm in grave danger right now. You must help her avoid the retribution of these people." "Yes, of course. I will do everything in my power," the man assured. "Now we will tell you who is interested in your cargo. By the way, if it's no secret that you were going to bring anything illegal, I'm just asking out of curiosity. I was supposed to be moving a very large shipment of valuable metals. The deal was completely classified. I still can't figure out who could have sold us out. Frankly, if it wasn't for you, a lot of innocent people would have died. And my firm and my reputation would have been completely ruined, and I would have given up the deal until the traitor was identified. I don't do that kind of business." "And how many people knew about the deal?" John asked. "I am my assistant and the customer. In my opinion, the circle of suspects has been narrowed down to one." The lawyer smirked. "Yes, but I need to check him out somehow. I've always trusted Igor, and I still doubt his guilt. Here I propose to check your assistant, and at the same time to punish those people who wanted to take possession of your cargo." "How to do it?" Robert asked quietly. "You have good connections in the police, don't you?" "Well, yes. I'm going to tell you the plan I've come up with. If you agree, we will punish your enemies and get rid of them at the same time, thus helping Molly to avoid the vengeance of these people," said the boy. "Yes, I agree with certainty," said Robert. "Well, I like your plan, don't you? It's very clever." "I can feel it right away," said Robert. "I certainly never would have guessed that William was playing a double game. A low, sneaky man. We've known each other for years. I've done a lot for him in my time. And as it turns out, I've been making an enemy. So here's the deal. You're announcing to your assistant today that you're changing the transportation route. And I'm asking my comrade to help us in exposing the criminal group," said John. "What am I supposed to do?" Molly asked. "You will now call William. Tell him that you got all the necessary information. But there are still some details to be clarified. We need to know if you will be informed about the change of route," the lawyer explained. An hour later, Molly and John were sitting in a cozy cafe. Molly looked sad. I remembered how they had recently been in a similar place with Alex, eating ice cream, making plans for the future. At the time, none of them could have guessed that the man who was the only one who could help the boy would turn out to be a despicable traitor. Molly thought about how lucky she was to have met such a wonderful man as John. If not for him, there was no telling how her fate would have turned out. "John, I'm very grateful for your help. Tell me, you have a personal score to settle with William. Vidyet is taking a big risk by helping me and Alex. William doesn't forgive such behavior. You know, I was going to leave this conversation for later. But if you brought it up, I'll tell you now, Molly, I like you very much. Just don't say anything." "First, after hearing me out," John said, seeing the protest in the girl's eyes. "Anyway, we'll get Alex out, but think about whether you need him." I realize that you met him at a difficult time in your life. You probably thought it was love, but it's more likely that you felt the protection and strength that came from Alex. John, there's no need to go on. This is an empty conversation. What can it give you? The lawyer got angry. He has absolutely nothing. No home, no family, no education. It's just him and that's it. What's waiting for you next to Alex? A miserable, miserable existence. You'll get bored of that kind of life very quickly. I, unlike him, can give you everything you deserve. I'm just at the beginning of my career. It won't be long before I'm on my feet, a successful man. Let's not ruin our friendship and never revisit this conversation again. I love Alex, and I don't care if he has something or not. The only thing I want is to always be by his side. Molly said confidently. Well, I wish you hadn't heard me, the boy frowned. You're not going to help us anymore. The girl asked bluntly. I'll finish what I started. I'm a professional, and I don't confuse personal relationships with work. The boy was silent and turned away from the window. It was obvious that his mood had soured, and his enthusiasm had diminished. Molly was afraid that John would not keep his word and would start to put sticks in the wheels on purpose. After all, at the moment their fate with Alex was in the hands of this man. But she had to trust the lawyer because she couldn't do anything without his help. No drive-through, take you home. Or will you sit in the cafe for a while? Asked John. Take me, if it's not too much trouble. I don't want to stay here alone. Near the entrance, John said goodbye to the girl, gave instructions, and promised that he would be in touch. If everything goes according to our plan, William will be arrested in a week. You will be able to live in peace, waiting for Alexa's release. The boy said sadly, John, thank you. We would never have gotten out of this without your help. Molly thanked him sincerely. Are you afraid I've figured it out in days? John, don't think about it. I've never been a mean person. Molly calmed down a bit. After this conversation, John appeared to be a man of honesty and fairness. She hoped that her intuition would not fail her and everything would be fine. The girl called William in the morning and told him that she had learned a lot of things. There were still some details to be clarified. The plan was for her to call him back in the evening. Until then, Robert would inform his assistant about the change of route. And if he was the traitor, William would know about the change. William, I'm sorry to bother you, the girl said into the receiver. I wanted to ask about Alex if there is any news. How good of you to call. I received information that the transportation route has been changed. Do you know anything about it? Quickly asked William. The man was visibly nervous, almost shouting into the phone. I don't know anything yet. Masterfully lied Molly, don't worry. I'll meet my man in the morning and find out everything. I'm expecting the call right away. William bellowed, hanging up the phone. Molly hung up the phone and smirked. John was right. Apparently, the trader at Robert's firm is his assistant David. He knows all the routes, and William didn't have that information. That's pretty weird. The girl was in a state of shock. During this short period of time, she realized that close friends are the most betrayed, the people we trust the most. The girl decided to call Robert to share her thoughts. He knew his employees better than she did. Maybe the traitor was someone else after all. Someone who didn't have access to all the information. Especially if David was working for William, he wouldn't have had to send Molly here. Cell phone rings. Hello. Don't get distracted, the girl asked, dialing Robert's number. No, I'm all worked up. Is something wrong? The man asked quickly. I've been thinking. Something's not right with me. What kind of things? Robert asked. William knows about the change of route. He's very excited and wants the information as soon as possible. Tell me, does Igor know the new route? Yes, he made it up himself. I gave him the maps on purpose to keep him informed. David here knows the layout of the new route, but William doesn't. How is that possible? Molly asked. I see what you mean. Then who? It was a secret shipment. No one knew about it except me and my assistant. Robert was confused. Thank you, Molly, for sharing your thoughts. I'm gonna call John. I wonder what he'll say about it. Robert immediately dialed the lawyer. John also realized that it was unlikely that Igor had done this. Robert, how long ago did you check the office for a bug? John asked. I never did. I didn't need to. The man was confused. That's not good. Get on it tomorrow morning. Something tells me you're being listened to. How else do you explain William knowing about your secret transportation, but not knowing the details? Thank you. I'll call you as soon as I hear anything, Robert promised. John was right. The very next day, a wire was found in Robert's office. The man went outside to call his lawyer. The guy said to leave it alone and not to spread the word to the staff about the find. That evening, Molly called William. I found out everything. I got a new itinerary. That's great. When are you coming? Asked the man. I'll email the paperwork. I'll be there a little later. I want to visit my aunt in a few days. The girl lied. Okay, I'll be waiting. It was time for the special operation. Molly was very worried. She feared that William would not be caught red-handed. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to get away. William is not Robert, and you can't escape him that easily. Don't be afraid of anything. Trying to reassure John. Just sit tight and wait for my call. I thought, what if William won't do it on his own? No way. He's too greedy to trust anyone with such a big job. Greed will get him killed. Time literally stopped for Molly. Tired of waiting for the cherished call from John, the girl began to pray for time. Everything should have ended long ago, but the phone was stubbornly silent. Unable to stand it, Molly decided to call herself. Yes, John said calmly. Did something go wrong? Molly asked. Why aren't you calling? I'm fine. I forgot to call. William's been arrested, and with him his whole company. The guy said without emotion. I'm sorry, I'm really tired. If there's any news about Alex, I'll call you right away. Molly hung up the phone and sighed with relief. It's okay. William had been arrested. But for some reason she felt very uneasy. John had changed beyond recognition. She knew he resented her for refusing him. But she had never promised him anything. She loves Alex and is not going to betray her love by exchanging it for material goods. Molly spent a few days all alone. She had nowhere to go, and she did not want to communicate with anyone. The girl patiently waited for any news and set him free. Robert, we're being honest here. I know who the real culprit is. So an innocent man gets hurt again. The girl asked me bluntly, but how can I tell you? There's a man who owes me a very large sum of money. He will never be able to pay me back. I suggested that he redeem his debt in this way. Anyway, it's easier for him to do a few years than to live in constant fear. I didn't press him, and he gladly accepted my offer. Well, that's probably the best option. Thanks anyway. You don't hold a grudge against John. He's lost his head in love, and I understand him very well. I mean, I was once willing to do anything stupid for you. It's a pity my former vices prevented me from knowing happiness with you. You're a very beautiful woman. Frankly, I don't envy Alex. The guy's lucky in some ways. Molly went outside and decided to walk to her rented apartment. She was overwhelmed with double feelings and thoughts. She didn't know if Robert would keep his word or betray her like everyone else she had encountered lately. Robert was her last hope. Was there no one else to help? Everyone had turned their backs on them, leaving them alone with their problems. Molly put the cup of coffee on the table and walked to the window. The first snow had fallen today. The girl was glad to see large-shaped snowflakes that did not fall down, beautifully covering the ground with a white blanket. Hearing the phone ringing, she ran to her room. Only Robert could call her. John had never made himself known. No one else knew her number. Hello, Robert, the girl said cheerfully. Any news, how do you say? Yes and no. Anyway, this is not a telephone conversation. You tell me your address. I'll stop by for a couple minutes. Why don't I go to the office? Molly was worried. Although Robert gave the impression of an adequate person, but still the girl knew him from the other side. That's why I was afraid. And I certainly didn't want to be alone with him. Don't be afraid, Robert said. I won't even go into the apartment if you want me to. Just give me the address. Molly dictated the address and went to the kitchen to put the kettle on. The doorbell rang just 10 minutes later. Hi, Robert smiled. What's my surprise? I don't understand, Molly. Come into the kitchen. It's very stuffy in here. I made tea. Wait, you and your tea, laughed the man. Look over here." Molly looked out into the corridor and froze, not believing her own eyes. Alex was standing near the door against the wall. The guy clutched a large bouquet of scarlet roses in his hands and smiled silently. "Sashka," Molly shouted, throwing herself on the neck of her favorite person. "Why didn't you warn me? I would have cooked dinner. We wanted to make a surprise, especially if we had everything with us." Robert nodded at the weighty bag of groceries. Molly, Alex, and Robert sat at the table. The girl couldn't look at the guy. She still couldn't believe her happiness. Robert wanted to leave right away, but Molly insisted that he stay for lunch. "I never thought I'd be sitting at the same table with you," Alex said, looking at Robert. "It's not for nothing they say that sometimes friends become enemies and enemies become friends." "Don't be afraid of enemies, be afraid of friends," philosophically, said Robert. "I am guilty before you, before Molly. I didn't think Molly would be so helpful either. By the way, your lawyer didn't go anywhere. He just changed his phone number. That's what a shallow person does." He seemed very serious and fair at first. "God help him," the judge said. Molly. "Alex is free. That's the main thing." "What are you going to do next?" Robert asked. "To live," smiled Molly. "That's right. I can offer you a job. Would you like to go?" asked Robert. "No," said Alex firmly. "We'll start our lives all over again, from scratch, so to speak. We'll probably go somewhere else." "As you asked Molly, would you ready to go anywhere?" "Seriously," said the girl. "Well, I approve of your choice." Robert opened the briefcase, took out a neatly folded package and placed it on the table. "What is it?" "It's for a new life," the man smiled. "I sincerely wish you happiness. You deserve it." Robert said goodbye to the young people and left for work. Molly unwrapped the roll-up and whistled in surprise. Such a sum of money she had never seen. "Oh." Alex was surprised. "It's paid off in full." "Any idea?" The guy smiled. "What? Remember that forest where we met?" asked Alex. "Of course, I have the happiest memories with this place. Maybe you noticed at the entrance from the forest behind the monastery stands a big term. I remember a 2-story carved house, very beautiful. There was an ad for sale at the gate. I thought it was unlikely anyone would want to buy a palace like that in the middle of nowhere." "Wait, where are you going with this?" Molly smiled. "Let's buy this house. It's so beautiful. It's quiet. And the air? I'll finally get to do what I love to do. I'll open a woodcarving shop." Alex's eyes sparkled, like a little kid who finally got what he's been dreaming of all his life. "Super. I think there is no better place to live," said the happy girl. "That's great. So tomorrow morning we go to a new life," said the guy, hugging Molly. Molly felt peace and bliss for the first time in her life. She felt warm and cozy around this manly man. She knew he would never betray her. She believed that they had a happy future ahead of them and a peaceful life, away from the hustle and bustle, intrigue and betrayal.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Michael drove up to the house in a white foreign car, parked the car near the driveway, and to a whistling tune, hurried to his parents' house. The 25-year-old man was in high spirits. He was going to propose to a girl he liked today. He had been going to a cafe where Adriana worked as a waitress for several weeks and tried to get her favor. However, the girl behaved in a detached manner towards him. She did not repel the guy, but she did not let him near her either. Michael patiently waited for Adriana to deign to respond to his proposal to meet with consent. And that day came, and they had been dating for more than a month. The guy rang the doorbell and waited impatiently for his mom to open the door. Michael knew that his father was still at work, so he chose the moment when he was not home to talk to his mother. Soon the door created Betty, and seeing her son on the threshold, exclaimed, "Why didn't you warn her that you were coming over? And do you even have your own keys to open the door? You have to make your mother get up to open the front door. I wanted to disturb you so that you could get away from the TV and meet me on the doorstep." Michael replied with a smile and kissed his mother on the cheek. Betty gently stroked her son's head and then followed into the living room. The young man followed his mother and, without waiting for the landlady to sit down, spoke to his mother. "I come to you with news, but good news. You probably remember that I told you about a girl I like very much. Anyway, she and I started talking, and I think I'm in love, although I'm not making any sense right now. I've fallen in love with a girl, and I don't think I have. I remember you used to walk around with an urn all the time. What are you trying to tell me? I want to ask her to marry me. It's time for me to start a family. And it's time for you to have grandchildren too, the young man said with a smile. Oh yeah, you've only known this girl for a couple of months, and you're already in a hurry to put a collar around her neck. You are sure of your feelings. Son, I'm sure of it. You have no idea what a nice girl she is, the son said enthusiastically. Don't answer so hotly at once. You'd better tell me about your anger. Who is she? Who are the parents? I understand that you started this conversation to inform me about the future acquaintance with your fiancé. How smart are you? And you've got it right, Michael said with a smile, and then began to tell his mother about his beloved. Betty learned from her son's narration that the girl is 22 years old and works as a waitress in a small cafe. She is from the village. She rents a room with a friend. The girl's name is Adriana, and she has never been married before. Michael's mom didn't have enough information. She started asking about Adriana's parents, who they are, and what they do. However, the son grumbled at these questions and asked why such meticulous details about the life of the chosen one. Betty wanted to answer the tycoon, but immediately changed her mind as she realized that the boy would not give any intelligible answers. He just didn't know them. The old woman then asked her son when the acquaintance with the girl would take place, and here the young man smiled and said that it would be tonight. Betty splashed her hands. She didn't expect it to be this day. Michael, seeing his mother's reaction, laughed and then hugged her and asked her not to worry. The older woman threatened her son playfully with her fist and mouthed, "This is not the way to do it. You should have told me about it in advance. I would have at least prepared a festive dinner in honor of it. Now I'll have to order something from the restaurant. Mom, you don't have to set the table. We'll just have tea and cake tonight. It'll be easier that way. I told you Adriana comes from a simple family, and she's not much for formal occasions. Okay, you got it. I guess I'll just have to tell my father myself," Betty said, smiling. "You're right on the money, as always," the boy replied, and then kissed his mom and immediately left the apartment. After a while, Michael and his girlfriend were sitting in the living room at his parents' house. The young man watched his mother asking tactfully questions to the guests. Adriana answered the landlady without any embarrassment. Soon their conversation was interrupted by the boy's father, Benjamin. The man from his wife already knew a little about the election of Michael, but nevertheless, like his wife, wanted to know everything about the girl. After all, the son is going to marry Adriana, so he approached her. "Are you a waitress? Are you really going to run with a tray in the hall all your life, waiting for tips?" Michael involuntarily wrinkled his nose at his father's question. He understood perfectly well that his father did not like where Adriana worked. The young man looked at the election to see her reaction. The girl, however, calmly answered Benjamin that the place of work suited her quite well, and she did not consider it shameful to take a tip when people themselves offered it of their own free will. As soon as Adriana's reply sounded, the landlord glanced at his wife, who was looking thoughtfully at her guest. The elderly woman felt her husband's gaze and turned to him. She understood perfectly well that the girl did not like the answer, and only Betty wanted to say something as Michael spoke. "Dear parents, now is not the most important thing, where Adriana works, because I can assure you that only we will legalize the relationship with her. Then my wife will stay at home. And I can assure you that our wedding will happen in the very near future, as I am going to ask for Adriana's hand and heart today." And after this phrase, the guy turned to the girl and softly said, "You are ready to become my wife and live the whole life together with me." Adriana was not embarrassed at this question. It was as if she knew that today Michael would propose to her. The girl was silent and did not hurry to answer. And the young man waited impatiently for his chosen one to speak. A few minutes passed, and Michael could not stand it and again made a proposal. And only then Adriana, smiling, said that she was ready to become a spouse. The guy sighed with relief and tenderly kissed his chosen one on the cheek, and then cheerfully told his parents to prepare for the wedding. As soon as the son with his future daughter-in-law left, then Betty softly said to her husband that she did not particularly like Adriana. Her husband looked at her husband with surprise and asked, "What, this girl did not please you? You see, she acts like a queen." Michael said that Adriana is from the village, and village girls behave modestly and are embarrassed when they first meet a guy's parents. I didn't see any embarrassment here. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my personal opinion. Honey, do you know better? I'm just confused by Adriana's answer about the profession. You know, it would be embarrassing in front of our friends and acquaintances. If Michael's wife works as a waitress, you realize that our family is quite well off. You and I are entrepreneurs, and our son too. So you see where I'm going with this. However, Michael said that after the wedding Adriana will not work there, but you need to talk to your son about it. I'll be sure to talk to him. And I will also try to meet with this girl alone before they apply to the registry office, thoughtfully said her spouse. Betty called her son after a couple of days after this conversation with her husband and asked about Adriana's job at the cafe. Michael was surprised by his mother's question and asked her why she would do that. The interlocutor replied that she just wanted to talk to the girl. The boy dictated the mother's address. Betty met Adriana at a cafe and returned home after the conversation. In a dejected mood that did not escape her spouse, the husband sympathetically asked his wife what had happened. Blagoviuvi replied that she drove to her son's girlfriend at work and caught her at the same table with a friend Michael. Benjamin responded with a surprised expression. But it's not a crime. It might be, but the fact is that the son's buddy was holding Adriana's hand, and then, as she noticed me, she abruptly removed her hand and became very embarrassed. In my opinion, it was not a friendly handshake. And then Ethan, seeing me, said hello and left in a hurry, which is not like him at all. You know he's always friendly with us. But okay, that's not the point. Next, I tried to talk to Adriana about her feelings for our son. She said that she loves Michael and added that she doesn't like strangers prying into her soul. You realize Adriana called me a stranger, and I'm her future in-laws. I mean mother-in-law. How do you like that, Benjamin? After his wife said that, he frowned. He did not like what he heard. The man nervously rubbed his nose and asked his wife if she was going to tell Michael about it. The woman nodded in response and picked up her phone, dialing her son's number. She wanted to communicate with him immediately. Michael answered. Betty, without preamble, asked him to come over to their house in the evening. The boy agreed and was soon at his parents' house. As soon as he entered the apartment, he turned to his mother. I know why you called me. Adriana called me and told me everything. She said you're prejudiced against her, and I'd like to know why. Although I can answer that for you. You both don't like that she's a waitress. What do you mean, prejudiced? The mother said, perplexed, and looked at her husband, who was looking at her son with a frown. And then Betty, seeing that her husband is not in a hurry to enter into conversation, said, I just wanted to talk to your chosen one. And I did not say anything bad even. Adriana, by the way, sat with your friend Ethan at the cafe where she works and held hands with him nicely. I think that's exactly what she didn't tell you. What are you trying to say? Ethan knows that Adriana is my fiancée, and they get along great, and it's not like he stopped by her place of work. Mom, just say you're not happy with my girlfriend just because she's not from a wealthy family. It's more honest. The son said softly. Betty looked sadly at her son and said quietly that she wanted to see him happy in the future. She was worried that Adriana was marrying for money and not for love. Michael looked reproachfully at his mother and asked her not to talk about it again. And as soon as he said, his father immediately turned to him. I promise you that Mom will not talk about it again, but you must also give me your word that Adriana will quit her job. And when are you going to apply? Adriana happily agreed to stay home after the wedding. We're going to the registry office. We'll be celebrating in a couple days. Whatever my fiancé wants, since I promised her that. Time flew by, and soon there was a lavish wedding with a lot of people. The newlyweds were given a lot of gifts and money, and the couple, after celebrating the big day, soon went on a wedding trip abroad. Returning from the trip, Michael asked his wife what she was going to do. After all, from the cafe quit before the wedding. Adriana replied that she would sit at home, since she did not want to work at the moment. Her husband happily agreed. He himself mentally dreamed that his wife did not work, but was a housewife who faithfully waits for her husband after a day's work. A couple of months passed as the weddings thundered on. Michael was working and Adriana was living a life of pleasure. She attended fitness workouts to spas. The young woman liked the fact that her husband was ready to fulfill her every whim, which she invariably took advantage of. The only thing that Adriana did not like was the frequent visits of her mother-in-law, who often hinted that Adriana was spending money. And so the girl once appealed to her husband to talk to her mother so that she did not come to us so often. As soon as I see Betty, I get mopey. She'll give me a stern look. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And I often hear her tell me I'm wasting my money. Oh, sweetheart, it's Mom. How can I stop her from coming over? I don't think you see my mother that way. She's trying to help you and me. I'll talk to her about the money. Adriana nodded contentedly in response, but didn't say anything. Michael called Betty after the conversation with his wife, and embarrassed, asked her to come over less often. He then added that she should stop rebuking Adriana with finances. This request from her son was a shock to the mother, and the woman involuntarily thought that Michael could only say such words under the influence of Adriana. Betty decided to speak frankly with her daughter-in-law in private. The woman chose the right moment and came to visit. Adriana saw her mother-in-law on the doorstep and pressed her lips together. Michael's mother noticed it and softly spoke. I don't understand you at all. Why you are turning Michael against me? You know very well that if I tell you about spending too much, it's the truth. You are still quite a young woman, and you could have gone to a higher institution to get a profession. You've completed 11 grades, and you're not even thinking about a major. I understand that you are going to live off your husband and not work. I don't understand you. Your son is happy with me. What more do you want? Michael, I don't mind staying home and not working. And about money, I don't think you should look into our wallet. My husband and I don't meddle with you. You're wrong, and I can tell you why. You probably forgot that we give you a penny every month, and not a bad one. So I have a right to talk about money, Betty replied calmly. Okay, I hear you, but I'm going to tell my husband about this conversation. And if you have a conflict, don't accuse me of it later, the daughter-in-law said. Betty did not continue the conversation and silently left. At home, the woman told her husband about the visit to her daughter-in-law. Benjamin was unpleasantly surprised by the behavior of his daughter-in-law and only wanted to tell about it. As they heard the sound of the door opening from the hallway, Michael entered the living room. The parents immediately noticed the frown on their son's face. Betty guessed. The boy's visit was related to today's conversation with her daughter-in-law, and the landlady turned out to be right. As the young man said in a rather rude manner, I promised you that Adriana would not work. So why don't you, father, keep your word? Today my mother was at Adriana's place and rebuked her for being a victim. When I came home, I saw my spouse with tearful eyes. Don't talk to your parents like that. Don't forget that your family is still financially dependent on us. And if the mother made a remark to Adriana, it was done on the merits, the head of the family said in response. Excellent. Now you have reproached me for using your money. Then don't give me any more money. We'll live on our own somehow. Michael said sharply and left the apartment at the same moment. Betty hoped that her son had said that in his heart and would call first in a couple of days. But that didn't happen. The woman was genuinely worried about the rift with Michael. She offered her spouse to be the first to go to reconciliation, but her husband said that it was not worth it. 10 days flew by, and Michael still did not call his parents. Neither did the daughter-in-law. The woman knew that the son is currently on a business trip, and therefore decided that it was necessary to first establish relations with the main. Betty got ready and drove to Adriana's house. Her door was opened by her sister-in-law, who unceremoniously said that her mother-in-law's visit was undesirable at the moment. The guests tactfully asked her to invite her into the apartment, but the daughter-in-law refused. Betty was about to leave, as noticed on the rack in the hallway another man's jacket. The woman looked at it and asked Michael at work, "Who's your guest?" "No one in his absence. What kind of silly speculation is that?" Betty only at that moment noticed that Adriana was wearing a hastily thrown silk robe, so she pushed her sister-in-law aside with her hand and entered the apartment. She hadn't even made it to the living room before she heard a man's voice say, "Adriana, honey, are you taking so long to pay for sushi?" Betty immediately recognized the voice of her son's friend. It was Ethan's. The woman walked briskly into the living room and saw Michael's buddy lying on the couch with his bare torso. Ethan turned at the sound of footsteps entering and looked embarrassed. Betty, barely holding back from shouting, muttered, "How are you both not embarrassed?" "Ethan, Michael is your friend. He's helped you out so many times with free money, and you betrayed him. Have you no shame?" Then the guests turned to her daughter-in-law and said, "And how could you afford it? From the wedding was only a few months, and you are already tumbling with another man. Why did you marry Michael then? Was it just so you could be wealthy?" At this time, Ethan stood up and pulled on a t-shirt. The man then approached Betty and asked her to calm down. The woman gave the guy a resounding slap in return. The young man rubbed his cheek and said, "I understand your outrage. But the thing is, I love Adriana, and she loves me. Yes, Michael is my friend, and I was going to tell him about our relationship in the near future. It's just that your son and I started courting Adriana together. She made her choice in favor of Michael. But after a while, she realized she didn't love him. You can't blame her for that. Let me tell you myself, Michael, he's a good man and a good friend. He should understand everything." Betty listened to Ethan in silence. The woman didn't know what to say at the moment, for she was overwhelmed with feelings, disgusted with the couple. The guests looked disdainfully at the couple and spoke to Ethan with disgust. "Get out of here, and don't come back here until your son gets here. And remember, you have to tell me everything. Michael the day he arrives, and if you don't, I'll tell him myself." After that, the woman turned to her daughter-in-law and spoke, "And you too must confess everything to your husband. I hope that you have not completely lost your conscience and try to tell your husband truthfully how you gave him horns." A few days passed. Betty waited anxiously for her son's return, and the day came. Michael showed up at his parents' house the next day. The mother looked carefully at her son, trying to see if he knew about everything. The young man saw that his mother was worried about him, and he quietly said not to worry. Then he added that he already knew about Ethan's relationship with Adriana. Betty anxiously asked him what he was going to do. Michael replied that Ethan was to blame. "He's the one who seduced Adriana. That's what my wife told me. And they had it one time. The day you came to visit. You knave fool," exclaimed the mother, who did not expect such words from her son. And then she realized that Michael knew the whole situation only from Adriana's words. He had not spoken to his friend yet. Betty, as soon as she realized it, said softly, "Have you talked to Ethan or not? He promised me he'd tell you himself." "No. Call your friend now, and have him come here right away. I want him to tell me everything in front of me." Michael looked glumly at his mother. The boy didn't object to his mother and complied with her request. Ethan answered immediately and said he would be there within the hour. Betty, hearing that the buddy would be arriving shortly, she nodded satisfactorily. An hour later, Ethan was sitting at his friend's parents' house, and in the presence of the landlady, he told her about his relationship with Adriana. Michael learned about the fact that the mate had been dating his wife for over a month now. Ethan also revealed that he sincerely loves Adriana and is ready to marry her immediately after the divorce. Michael looked at his friend sternly. At the moment, he didn't know who to believe. Only yesterday his wife had assured him that she had been intimate with Ethan only once, and now it turned out to be a completely different story. Michael was closely watched by his mother. The woman understood that her son is now unbearably difficult morally, and the young man nervously rubbed the bridge of his nose with 2 fingers. A pause hung in the room. Betty and the guest waited for Michael to speak. He, in turn, stood up and spoke clearly. "I've lost my friend anyway. And the rest, Mom, you'll find out later. And you, Ethan, it is no longer your concern. And a huge request never to appear on my horizon again. I don't want to see you under any circumstances. Just forget you ever had a friend." After these words, Michael kissed his mother and, without paying attention to his friend's outstretched hand, left the apartment. Ethan apologized to Betty and hurried after his friend. Michael, however, as soon as he saw that his former friend was catching up with him, told him firmly to stay away from him. Ethan tried to explain himself, but his companion looked at him menacingly and repeated his request with contempt. Meanwhile, Adriana was waiting for her spouse at home. She knew that her husband had gone to his mother. The young woman had already had a word with Ethan before then and asked the man to say that they had been intimate once. However, the lover said he would not do so. The young woman still hoped that Ethan would fulfill her request. And so Michael walks into the house, where the wife is sitting meekly on the couch. The girl looked at her spouse and immediately realized that her husband was talking to Ethan. Adriana lowered her gaze to the floor, waiting to see what her spouse would say. Michael came up to her and asked softly, "Why did you lie to me yesterday? Why did you lie to me yesterday?" "Ethan just told me about everything recently." "What are you talking about? You know perfectly well. You don't have to lie to me right now. It's not the best thing to do. In your case, it's more important for me to know the truth. Only then we can do something about it. I don't like lies, and I ask you to always tell the truth." In a low voice, the husband said, "Yes, Ethan and I have met many times, but I don't know what came over me. Your mother always reproached me for something, and I needed to vent, and I found Ethan to be that support. You're gonna ask me why not you. I'll tell you. It was hard for me to complain about your mother. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I only love you. Believe it or not, I'm very sorry for what I did. Yes, I am. What else do you want me to say? I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. You want to throw me out like a toy? Go ahead." After that, the young woman covered her face with her hands and cried. Michael looked at his wife, and it was unbearably painful for him to see a loved one crying. He went to her, lowered himself down, and gently kissed the barrel of her ear, and then said that he wanted to forget about the affair and never remember it again. Then he gently added, "Let's start fresh. I promise I'll never remember it, but you won't cheat on me again. This is the only way you and I can save our marriage. Understand that I love you very much, but I want to know that you feel the same way about me." Adriana responded by hugging her husband, crying and thanking him for his generosity. Michael tenderly pressed his wife to him, and then kissed her on the lips, adding that from that day on it would be one and everything would be fine in the future. Several months flew by after Adriana cheated on Michael. Adriana completely stopped communicating with Ethan, and soon the young woman became pregnant. She was not particularly happy about this circumstance, as she did not want to burden herself with the troubles of a child. Therefore, Adriana decided, without saying anything to her husband, to terminate the pregnancy. The young woman went to the Women's Counseling Center and soon received a referral for hospitalization. However, Adriana did not manage to do as she had planned. Michael saw the referral, which the girl forgot to remove. The man immediately turned to his spouse. "What do you mean? You are pregnant and did not put me on notice. You and I agreed that there would be no more secrets between us. We're not ready to become parents at this time. You said yourself there are still business problems. And as far as I know, your mother's back to helping you financially, which you're not refusing. That's not an argument to terminate the pregnancy. I'm against it, the young man said emphatically and defiantly tore up the referral for hospitalization. Adriana realized that there was no point in arguing with her husband because in this situation he would insist on his own. The girl shrugged her shoulders in displeasure and mumbled that then she would need double care and attention. Michael, hearing Adriana's words, looked at his wife with a joyfully perplexed look and asked her if you lacked my attention. I don't mean that. Since I'm in an interesting position, I need to go to a sanatorium to rest. All right, sweetheart, everything you said is no problem. Michael was delighted that he would soon become a father, and he was eager to share his joy with his mother. Betty took the news with delight and congratulated the young family from the bottom of her heart and advised her son to be attentive to his other half. Time passed, and at the due date, Adriana gave birth to a baby boy who was given the name Liam. Michael rejoiced over the event like a child. He, while his wife was in the hospital, managed to make repairs in one room, organized it as a nursery. In this man was helped by his mother. She picked up wallpaper, and Betty together with her husband bought a stroller and a crib. Adriana did not appreciate the efforts of her mother-in-law and husband. The young woman saw that the room was now a nursery instead of a bedroom. Disappointed sighed Betty, noticed the grieved look of her daughter-in-law, and in bewilderment asked her daughter-in-law what she was not satisfied. The girl, holding back her displeasure, softly mumbled, "Now my husband and I have no bedroom. I told Michael that it's too early for us to have children. So when are the living conditions not ready? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? So live many families in a 2-room apartment when one room is given to children and the second room is occupied by parents," replied the mother-in-law. "But you live with your husband in a 3-room apartment and Michael had a separate room and you have bedrooms," Adriana said haughtily. Michael felt that if his mother continued the conversation with his wife, a quarrel might break out. So the young man, in order to diffuse the situation, suggested that they all sit down at a festive table and celebrate the birth of their son. Michael's idea was taken up by his father, saying to his daughter-in-law, "You gave us an heir, for which we are very grateful. And now, if you have a beautiful daughter in the near future, you will have a 3-room apartment. No more children. I gave birth to Liam, and that's the end of it," Adriana replied firmly. Time moved slowly. Michael hurried home after work to babysit his son, and his wife, meeting her husband, complained that she was very tired to take care of the child, as the baby requires constant attention. The head of the family did not understand how Adriana can be tired of his son. Michael even addressed the mother on this occasion. He briefly outlined the situation. Betty listened attentively to her son, and without any shyness explained that Adriana loves herself too much and wants all the attention to be directed only to her. A year after Liam was born, Adriana said that the baby should be placed in a nursery. Betty was against this and was very clear about it. "Liam is still very young. We should wait until he is at least 2 years old. You don't understand how 24 o'clock a day it is to be with a baby. I don't even have time for myself, and I want to have that too. Personal space. But you're a mother, you don't belong to yourself now, because you have responsibilities. And why put the baby in a nursery if you're not going to work?" Betty said with indignation, "What's work got to do with it? I don't think you heard me. I've been at home for a year without a care in the world. I'm entitled to a vacation," nervously exclaimed the daughter-in-law. "Without deceiving others, Michael. As soon as he comes home from work, he immediately deals with his son, and you run to the spa or something. And my grandfather and I often do not rush with my grandson." Adriana did not answer, but pressed her lips together, letting her know that she would do it her way. And as a result, it happened. Just a month later, Liam was registered in the nursery. The baby had been in the nursery for a couple of weeks as a cold. Betty immediately expressed to her sister-in-law that it was too early to put the baby in the nursery, as he was still small. Liam recovered after 10 days. Adriana wanted to take the boy to the nursery again, but here her mother-in-law resented her and said she would not allow it. Michael at this moment listened to the squabble between wife and mother and did not know how to reconcile them. And then the man realized, and he proposed to hire a nanny for the baby at least up to 2 years. Adriana liked the idea, and the young woman gladly agreed. Betty looked reproachfully at her son, letting him know that he had suggested the wrong solution. Michael perfectly understood his mother's displeasure, but at the moment he wanted to please his wife. And only because of this he did not change his decision. And soon Liam had a nanny, who was found through an ad. She was a 30-year-old woman. Her name was Kathy. She quickly found an approach to the baby and performed her duties perfectly. Michael liked the way the nanny treated Liam, but Adriana always had complaints about Kathy. And once again, when Adriana began to reprimand her husband that the nanny was not doing her job properly, her husband couldn't stand it and said, "You know, it's very hard to understand you. You wanted a nanny to look after our son. What's your problem again? Last time you complained that Kathy was looking at her phone screen more than she was doing Liam. And then you claimed she yelled at the baby when he dropped a mug. What happened this time? You just said that to me like I made it up. I didn't say that. I just want to clarify what happened again. Why are you mad at the babysitter?" The head of the family said with a frown in his eyebrows. "Okay, I'll tell you straight up. I saw that Kathy often looks in the refrigerator. Why don't you think it's strange? I mean, she didn't put anything in there. And then I noticed that we were missing some food." Adriana said. The man looked at his wife with bewilderment. This is the kind of news he had not expected. After a little silence, the husband asked his wife if she was sure of her words. Adriana irritably shrugged her shoulders and exclaimed that there was no point in lying to her. The very next day, Michael got up to go to work. He wanted to have a word with the nanny while his spouse was still asleep from the morning. He greeted Kathy as usual, said a friendly hello, and then, without any preamble, told her about the missing groceries. The woman, hearing this, blushed instantly and spoke indignantly. "To accuse me like that, you must have hard evidence. I will not deny that I look in the refrigerator, but only to get food for the baby. We had originally agreed that your wife would give me food for Liam, and I would only need to heat and feed the boy. However, Adriana Viktorovna sleeps until 11 in the afternoon, and I come to you at 8, and I need something to feed the child. So, in order not to disturb your wife, I take out what's cooked myself, and it's warming up. I all realize that, apparently, do not fit on some parameters Adriana Viktorovna. She often makes me remarks off topic, and I'll be honest, that on these, I give reasonable answers. Just understand, I know my job, and if I make mistakes, I accept criticism adequately. But if you take your wife's comments, they are not justified. I apologize for the harshness, but it seems to me that Adriana Viktorovna should reconsider her views on life and stop picking on me over nothing. If I'm being rude now, you can fire me right now, after what I said." Kathy fell silent and bided her time, looked at Michael, who stood thoughtfully interlocutor for a while waiting for an answer, and then wanted to add something else, but did not speak. The landlord noticed it and immediately asked, "It seemed to me that you did not say everything." "It all seemed to me. I'm just waiting for your decision." Michael suggested that Kathy take care of Liam. He decided for himself that he should talk to his wife tonight. The man realized he believed every word the nanny said, but the behavior of his wife could not understand. In the evening, coming from work, Michael told his wife about the conversation with Kathy. The young woman took what she heard in a peculiar way. Adriana told her husband that maybe I was wrong, and she was really picking on Kathy, and immediately added that all this is because she is tired and she wants to go to the sea. Her husband suggested waiting a month to go on vacation together. But then Adriana said that it will not be a vacation, as she will have to constantly look after the child. Michael, after this conversation for a couple of days, pondered, and his wife in the meantime, all his affectionately persuaded him to let her go to the sea. And the man decided that there is nothing wrong if his wife would go on vacation, and in a couple of weeks he and Liam would join her. When Betty found out about it, the woman turned on her son with an angry speech. She accused him of being naive and of allowing his wife too much. Michael listened to his mother, but did not change his decision. The young man said, "Mom, I don't see anything wrong if Adriana goes away alone now. Realize that lately she has become agitated. Everything irritates her. I want to see her again as the friendly girl I met. She'll be at sea without us for a couple of weeks, and then I'll join her with my son." Well, don't let them get you again. How was it literally after the wedding? Soon, Adriana went to the seaside. Michael called his wife 2 or 3 times every day. The wife would reply that she was doing well and loved it here. She described how she was spending her time. The husband then thought that he had done the right thing and let his beloved go before them. And then it was time to leave Michael and the baby to the sea, as Adriana called and said that she was leaving for home. On the questions of the spouse about the departure, the wife answered veilingly, without giving specific answers. The man did not argue and said he would meet her when she arrived home. Adriana explained to her spouse that the weather at the resort would be overcast for a week and there would be nothing to do. Adriana saw that her answer upset Michael, so she suggested going to the sea in a month. The man looked at his wife confusedly and said how simple it all works out. Wanted and again on vacation at the resort. And you did not think that this is a big waste in terms of finances. Believe me, the money in our family budget does not fall from the sky. I have to work my ass off practically every day. What are you getting so worked up about? Your parents make a good living. If you ask them, they will not spare a little money for their own son. Listen, but you and I are grown-ups, and we have to make our own budget, not rely on the help of our mother and father. It seems to me that you've forgotten what it's like to earn money. Maybe you should get a job." Michael said irritably. "Is that how you talk? All right, I'll go to work, but let your father tell me later that it's a shame to be a waitress," the wife said defiantly. That evening, Adriana defiantly went to sleep in the children's room. Michael tried to talk to his wife. He absolutely did not want to quarrel with her. However, the young woman haughtily told him that at the moment she did not want any more conversations, and the man had nothing left but to go to bed alone. The day after this conversation with his wife, Michael went to work in a gloomy mood. He was worried about his rift with Adriana. He was even more worried that his wife would actually go to look for a job as a waitress. He didn't consider it a shameful profession. He was more concerned that Adriana would be hit on by guys. And just this Michael imagined, as at the same moment he felt a rising wave of jealousy. Meanwhile, Adriana, as soon as her husband left for work, also got up and started to pack. The nanny looked at the young woman with surprise, as she had long been accustomed to the fact that she got up around 12 noon, and then washed herself in front of the mirror and went about her business, and returns closer to her husband's arrival. Michael could not concentrate on his work. He kept going back to his conversation with his wife yesterday. And then the man called Adriana, but she did not answer. Michael tried several more times to call his wife, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. On that day, he left work earlier than usual, and coming home, found that Adriana was not there. The landlord turned to the nanny, asking her where his spouse had gone. Kathy discreetly replied that Adriana did not report to her. Michael, in a shower of features, sat down in a chair and thought about it. And at the same moment, he heard the front door being rejected. The man jumped up and with a quick step followed into the hallway. He saw his wife smiling, who, seeing him, stopped smiling and only spoke softly. "You're supposed to be at work, aren't you? Where have you been?" The husband answered the question with a question. You said I had to look for a job. That's what I've been doing. Let's forget about yesterday. We had a fight the first day you arrived. I missed you so much while you were away. You don't have to look for a job. I'd rather see you greet me than wait for you to come back. Tired after a day's work. The man spoke softly and looked at his wife, waiting to see what she would say. But Adriana said nothing in response. From that day on, Adriana completely ignored her spouse. She behaved with him in an aloof manner. She went to bed defiantly in the children's room. Michael tolerated this attitude to himself for several days. He thought that his wife was just showing him her character. This continued for another week, and the man could not stand it. He decided to talk to his wife. He turned to his wife and said that he did not want to live with the woman he loved, as with a neighbor on the landing. Adriana looked indifferently at her husband and said, I live with you. What else do you want? I have already explained my position to you. You sit at home doing practically nothing. You don't do anything with your child. Kathy told me everything. As soon as I go to work, you disappear after a while. What is it? Why don't you tell me where you disappear to? I tend to think you're having an affair. Tell me if that's the case. I don't understand you. Can I have my own space? Or do you think I have to report to you every time I do something? I'm not your personal item. Okay, you're right about not being my property. But I need to know what my spouse does when I'm at work. Anyway, I'll tell you what. The day after tomorrow, you and I are enrolling our son in daycare, and you'll be dropping him off and picking him up on your own. If you're not happy with that, it's time to talk about divorce. Because I can't live like this anymore. And I don't want to. Divorce? Are you crazy? What about our son? Adriana asked, puzzled. Did you remember about the degree? Congratulations. I've told you everything. And then you can draw your own conclusions. After this conversation about divorce, Adriana changed. She became more affectionate towards her husband, and Michael thought it was necessary to talk about it earlier. The man hoped that now in their family again will be harmony and love. And in fact, for a couple of months, the spouses lived in Idle. And then Adriana asked her husband to buy a car. Michael was surprised by the request and asked why his wife needs another car when they have a foreign car. And also the head of the family added that he was always ready to take his wife wherever she needed to go. Adriana said that she wants to be a complete mistress of transportation and not to turn to her husband to take her to one place or another. Michael's mother found out about this conversation. Her son had told her about it himself. Betty became suspicious about Adriana's request and directly asked who, "Why do you need a car? You stay at home and you have nowhere to go. I understand if you were working, then it would be different. My son has already told you everything. I didn't expect anything else from him. What can I say to you? I just wish my husband would give me a gift like this, especially since he's already doing well with his business. It's dark. That's you, Adriana. You and I don't have a very good relationship, but my son loves you, and I wouldn't want you to hurt him. I'm not gonna hurt him. Michael, and if you love your son so much, help me get him to buy me a car. Maybe you and I will have a warmer relationship after that," my daughter-in-law said, and smiled amiably. "I will think about your suggestion," Betty replied. After this conversation, 7 months passed, and Michael purchased his wife's automobile. His parents helped him buy the vehicle. Adriana, by this time, had already completed her driver's training. If Adriana was happy that she became the owner of the car, Michael repeatedly regretted that he had gone to the trouble of his wife and bought the car. And the thing was that since the moment when the wife had a foreign car, Adriana always disappeared somewhere. And then another event happened in the family, which unpleasantly surprised Michael. The man went to the chest of drawers, where the cash was stored, and found that there is no 1/3 of the amount. The head of the family was shocked, because without a joint agreement the money was not taken. Michael immediately called his spouse, but she did not answer. The man was dejected, but looked out the window. He did not know what to think in this situation. He was distracted from his thoughts by a phone call. Michael thought it was his spouse calling, but it turned out to be his mother, who spoke indignantly. "I understand what's going on in your family, but your son should live with you, not with his grandparents. Adriana said that Liam would stay with us for a couple of days, but the boy has been with us for a week, and none of you have bothered to check on him." "Wait, Adriana's mom told me that you yourself expressed a desire to take your grandson for 10 days. That's exactly what didn't happen. Your wife called me a week ago and asked me to take a couple days because she had some business to take care of. I said yes, and instead of 2 days, it's been a week, and there was no answer from you. I'll come and get Liam," said Michael, who was unpleasantly surprised for the second time that his wife had deceived him. Soon the young man was sitting at his parents' house. Betty looked at the frown on her son's face and purely intuitively felt that he was not doing well. The woman touched Michael's hand and affectionately inquired how he was doing. The boy looked at his mother and said nothing. Betty sat down next to her son and said, "You come on, don't get dark. Tell me what happened. I can see you're not calm. Things with Adriana and I are getting worse and worse. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I would do anything for her, and what I see in return is total indifference. Tell me why she lied to me about the degree. Adriana told me you wanted to take care of the baby, but she actually asked you to do it. And then there's the missing money. You've been robbed," Betty exclaimed. "No, Adriana took the money and didn't even tell me. The money is to buy goods for a trip I'm going on soon," the son replied. Betty wanted to continue the conversation, but Michael politely dismissed the conversation and then dressed his son and said goodbye to his mother and soon drove home with Liam. On the way, he called his spouse several more times, but Adriana did not answer. Adriana came home at the beginning of the 11th evening and, as if nothing had happened, asked her husband about his work. Michael was furious with his wife's behavior, and as soon as the wife went to the kitchen, he rushed after her and, barely restraining anger, said, "Maybe you can explain how I should understand you. You took money from the house secretly. You flashed Liam at your mother, and you're not answering your phone. I was very busy, so I couldn't answer. As for the money, I needed it for business. I decided to take an eyelash extension course. I didn't tell you about it. Otherwise, you would have started talking me out of it like you always do. That's why I took the money to pay for the course. I hope I've answered all your questions. Why would I talk you out of it? I'm all for you having something you love to do. But you know, it doesn't work that way. After all, you're my wife, and I need to know what's going on in your life. Don't you notice that you're living your own separate life away from me and my son? Where? There's no place. You come home whenever you want. I'll tell you more about the last time you cooked dinner. Lately, I've been doing it. I'm sorry, but now I'm telling you everything, because I've already spoken my mind. I feel better now. And now, I'll speak out. I don't have the heart to cook, wash, clean. I just want to live and enjoy life. I've had enough of cooking in the village, scrubbing floors, planting seedlings. Now I want to live for myself. And I only signed up for the course so your mother would stop running my nose in it that I'm a freeloader. And once again, you need your wife to do the housework. Then this problem can be very easily solved. A lot of people hire housekeepers. Why? And you and I can't do the same. This way we will solve the problem in one fell swoop. I won't have to do things I don't want to do. And you won't have to cook dinner yourself. What do you think of my offer? I'm starting to think you don't really need a family. We're not hiring a housekeeper. I'm suggesting that you rethink the way you look at life. If you don't listen to me, our marriage will eventually start to fall apart. Realize that I'm not an iron man, and my patience can break too." Adriana, after the last phrase of his wife, came up to him and gently hugged him, and then said that she would try to change. Michael was surprised by his wife's words. He did not expect her to change overnight. After all, only a few minutes ago, she was defending her point of view, and now suddenly she behaved differently. Meanwhile, Adriana stood on her toes and quietly suggested that we make love. Michael was completely confused after this phrase, because recently he and his wife had rarely had intimacy. The man did not bother himself with thoughts, but took Adriana in his arms and carried her to the couch. The next morning, Michael woke up and saw that his wife was not there. He was surprised, got up and went to the kitchen, where he saw that his wife was making coffee. The head of the family looked at the election with surprise. After all, the girl had never done this before. The man said in amazement, "You scare me. What's wrong with you? I told you that I will try to become an exemplary and caring wife. You didn't. I'm glad you did. I hope that it will always be so," replied the husband, and tenderly kissed the chosen one. A few days passed, and Michael was about to go to another city to pick up the goods. How did Liam fall ill? The trip had to be postponed because Adriana was traveling to an eyelash extension course. Michael wanted to ask his mother to take care of the baby initially, but Betty caught a cold herself. Liam recovered only 2 weeks later. During this time, Adriana only traveled for her training and immediately returned home. It seemed to Michael then that their married life with his wife was back to the way it was when they were a happy couple. As Liam recovered, he was put back into daycare. Michael intended to go on a business trip. Then his mother called him and told him that she wanted to go to a sanatorium and offered to take her grandson with her so that he could breathe the sea air. Michael told the news to his wife, and she was delighted with the news. Adriana told her husband that it would be wonderful if the son will be at the resort with his grandmother. She also added that sea air would be good for Liam after his illness. Michael agreed with his wife and informed his mother about it. And soon Betty went to the sea with her grandson. And then, after a few more days, Michael left for the goods. The man always left for 4 days, and Adriana knew about it. But this time, Michael arrived a little earlier. He wanted to surprise his wife. On the way home, the man stopped at a flower store and bought a luxurious bouquet of white roses. Michael imagined how happy his wife would be with the flowers, as he had not bought them for a long time. It seemed to the man that the bouquet would not be enough to make his beloved happy. Therefore, sat in a jewelry store and bought a silver brooch in the form of a soaring swallow. And Michael quietly opens the front door to his apartment with his key. Anticipating a joyful meeting, the man quietly passes into the hallway as he hears an unfamiliar male voice, which says, "Be patient, kitten a little more, and soon this show will be over, and you and I will live happily ever after." The landlord stopped in bewilderment. He felt the rage beginning to flare up inside him. Michael threw the flowers aside and hurried into the room, where he saw his exact copy in bed with his wife. The man was dumbfounded. And then the stranger, seeing the entrant, said with a smile, "I told you that soon the play will be over." True, it's not quite the ending I had planned. But since everything went like this, then maybe it's true that fate loves you more than me. What brother? Who are you? You have a short memory, I see. You were born just a few minutes before me. The stranger grinned. Adriana looked at her husband with a sneering gaze, waiting for his reaction. Michael felt his wife's gaze and looked at her. The woman didn't take her eyes away. Only a sarcastic grin appeared on her face. The owner of the apartment could not believe that his beloved was currently in bed with a man who looked like 2 drops of water like himself. And only Michael was about to say to his spouse, Barbs, as the stranger spoke again, "I think we can save the marital squabbles for later. Now, brother, let's get down to family business. You're not my brother. And get the hell out of my apartment right now. And don't tell me what to do now or later. You and I are never gonna get anywhere. Did you really forget you have a twin brother?" Michael looked at the stranger, and somewhere in his subconscious mind, there was a memory of him hugging a boy who looked like him in his early childhood, and they were crying and saying something to each other. However, this memory was so distant that Michael thought it was his fantasy rather than a real piece of memory. Meanwhile, the doppelganger stood up, pulled on his jeans, and then sat down on the couch and asked Adriana to make coffee. The woman unquestioningly obeyed this request. Michael, this action angered, because his wife fulfills the requests of a stranger to him. The owner of the apartment looked with hatred at the guests, and again with a lordly tone suggested to him to clean up. The stranger laughed in response and said, "Don't talk, brother. I'm sorry that your husband seduced you, but I don't think she ever loved you. Judging by what she told me about you, I take it you don't remember me at all." "Well, I don't, although I can understand it, because you've lived well all this time. Your parents spoiled you. You're their only son. I, on the other hand, had a very different fate. Unlike you, I've lived all these years dreaming of finding your parents and making them suffer, and you too. I even came up with a plan, but you got back from your trip early." "What are you talking about?" "You're gonna explain this now, or I'm calling the police. I can't figure out who you are. I don't deny that you look exactly like me. But there are many paradoxes in life, that there are people who are doppelgangers. But that doesn't mean you're my brother." That's when Adriana and Michael walked in. "Shut up." The young woman brought on a tray Turk-flavored coffee and coffee sets. The girl stirred the drink into a cup and invited everyone to the coffee table. Adriana first of all served a cup of coffee to the guest, and then to her husband. While doing so, she told her husband not to hesitate. "This man is actually your brother. His name is William. And I can prove it to you. I didn't really believe it at first either. He looks like you, and he looks like you. But he told me everything. All I can say is that William looks like you on the surface. He's a real man you want to be around. And how long have you been in a relationship with this man?" "How long have I been re-wearing my goat horns?" Trying not to raise his tone, Michael said. "After I got back from the resort. That's where I met William. That's why I didn't want you to go there with Liam, because it would have been awkward for me to meet William. You said you could provide proof. May I ask how you're going to do that?" Michael said. The young woman easily got up from her chair and without a word went into the hallway. She soon returned with a handbag. She took out a piece of paper and handed it to her husband. Michael took the sheet, unfolded it, and silently began to read. After a few minutes, the landlord looked at William in bewilderment and spoke a little audibly. "How can this be? It is impossible. What is it that surprises you so much?" "The fact that you have a twin brother," William asked. "Exactly. Why weren't you with me all this time?" Michael answered the question with a question. "That's not for me to ask, but for your parents. But at least you trust this document." Adriana did the parentage test. By the way, I'd like to say she took your money for the test, not for the eyelash extensions course. I gotta hand it to her. "Well, you've got a pretty smart girl," the guest said. "I'm not interested in information about my wife now, but you. Where have you been all this time? Why didn't you and I live in the same family?" Frowned Michael, who at the moment was in a state of shock. He had already reread the parentage test several times and scrutinized the signatures and seals on the document. William was silent for a while, and then spoke. The man told his brother that they had been born into the family forever. Drunkenness of their parents and guardianship authorities deprived their mother and father of parental rights, and then at the age of 3 years, the twins were taken to an orphanage, where they were brought up together until a certain point, namely almost to the age of 6. After that, a couple came to the orphanage and wanted to adopt the boys, but for some unknown reasons the adults took only one child, and the second one was not taken. Thus, Michael was raised by foster parents, and William remained in the orphanage. The landlord listened attentively to his brother. As soon as the interlocutor was silent, Michael shook his head without understanding, and then said, "I am not very strong in the laws of adoption, but I know for sure that it is not allowed to separate brothers or sisters. If my parents adopted me, they should have adopted you. That's a question you'll ask your mother or father, but not me. Your parents promised me they'd take me too, and for years I waited for them, but in vain. I'll never forget how we said goodbye and cried like girls and promised each other that soon we would live together again. Your parents promised me they'd come back for me. I asked your mother that question when I was grown up and out of the orphanage. Don't look at me like that. Yes, I was able to find your family, and I wanted a good reunion with my brother. But your mother forbade me to come within a stone's throw of you. That's when I went crazy. That you had everything like a normal kid, but I didn't. And you haven't even thought about me in all these years. Wait, take your time. I had vague visions that you were cuddling with a boy who looked like me. And then I remember asking my mom when we were picking up my brother. And then she said you were dead. And as time went on, I slowly forgot all about it. I mean, how old was I then? You know very well. And then after a while I asked my parents about you again. But my mom told me that I once had a dream about my brother, but I didn't really have anyone. So, I'm an only child, and I really thought I was. And now it turns out my mom lied to me. Stunned, Michael said, I guess that's just the way it is. I told you that. These are questions you should be asking your mother, not me. The man said carelessly, I will. But tell me why, when you left the orphanage, you met only with my mother and did not try to find me. That's a different story. I was going to do it, but I want to tell you right away that unlike you, I grew up not a boy, and quite a hooligan. I was registered in the children's police room, and when I left the orphanage, I visited your mother, where I was turned away. Then I wanted to see you, but I had important things to do at the time. Anyway, a bunch of us robbed a big store, and I was caught on CCTV. I was soon picked up, and I got time out of jail. I tried to contact your mother on the phone, but she soon changed her number. As soon as I got out of prison, I literally only got out for a few days before I got another sentence for hooliganism. Released early for good behavior, and I decided to take a little rest before thinking about how to continue to live. So I went to a resort where I met your wife. It was a real shock to me at the time. What kind of things can happen in life? A confluence of circumstances. I'm making love to my wife and my own brother. It was Adriana who told me I looked like her husband. And then she showed me your picture. I just asked her what her mother-in-law's name was. Adriana said Betty, and I had no more doubts. I thought it was just a coincidence, but when I heard your mother's name, I realized that it was your spouse who was really next to me in my arms. That's when I thought it was time for retribution. And after Adriana started talking about you, I realized that she would help me with everything. What did you intend to do next? Michael said quietly, to become you. Adriana put your picture on my phone, and she and I went to the barbershop to get my hair cut, just like you. And within an hour, I looked like you beyond recognition. And then Adriana told me how you acted, how you talked to people. You know, she was just bringing me up to speed. What was supposed to happen to me? Michael, who had already guessed the answer, barely squeezed out a question. Do you understand? You were supposed to disappear, just disappear. You've had a good life already. Now it's my turn. Everything has to be fair. Don't you think so? William said nonchalantly. Would you take the life of your own brother? Michael said hoarsely. I've been thinking about this for a long time. You've done nothing wrong to me, you see. But I am offended that you let yourself live, forgetting about me. And I haven't been able to forget about you all these years. How many childhood tears did I shed at the orphanage? Being separated from my brother. How many times did I try to escape to find you? All that pain was stored in my heart for years. And one day that pain turned into hate. And about taking your life. No, I couldn't do that. But there are special people for that. For a good price. There was a man, and he's gone. And if I were you, I'd do you justice with your privilege. It's very simple, brother. Michael was glumly silent. He had not expected such a simple explanation from a relative. It was also unbearable for the man. It hurt that his wife, who had shared his bed with him and had been lying without remorse, knew about all this. There was silence in the room. Each of the three was thinking about something else. Michael was the first to speak. He had just realized that his unexpected arrival had ruined the plans of the love couple. The man turned to his brother. "Everything you planned has already gone to tatters. Your next move. You're not going to take my life with your own hands, are you? I already know what you're planning, so I can do something to protect myself." "That's a good question, and I've been expecting it from you. It all depends on how you handle the situation. I've done quite well for myself. I've spent time learning your so-called habits, and it's easy for me to become you. You know exactly what I'm getting at, don't you? I might add that Adriana and I have even made an experiment in this matter. She and I went to your mother's house together. And guess what, Betty? No, she cured me of you. In short, your fate depends on you. I have nothing more to say on the subject. I understand you perfectly. Give me a few days. I have some things to sort out." Michael said thoughtfully, "No problem. But if you want to go to the police for help, that would be your folly. Just don't forget you've got a little boy. Think of him. I don't need the police, and let's not make threats. Don't forget that the child is not only my son, but Adriana's too. And she's a mother after all. And I don't think she cares about the baby." The landlord spoke harshly. Soon William left, and the couple was alone. Adriana nonchalantly collected the cups on the tray and went into the kitchen. Michael followed. He stood and silently watched his wife wash the dishes, and as soon as there was an attempt, the last cup, he asked her to sit down for a conversation. The young woman shrugged indifferently, but complied with the request. The man felt that at the moment he wanted to hit the chosen one in the face, but he restrained this urge. Michael sat down opposite Adriana and glanced at her. The girl coolly endured the gaze, and after a few minutes said, "If you are going to make me regret something or make me feel remorseful, you're wasting your time. I didn't marry you out of great love. I just wanted to get on with my life, because I had no desire to go back to the village. You're not my kind of man, to put it mildly. You're basically a Rocklin. But your brother is a real man, a man you can go to the ends of the earth with. And I'm glad that show's over. How long did you intend to wait with William before you executed your plan? He told me I needed you to open a third outlet. You told me that yourself. And naturally, I told William about it. So we would have continued to play our roles for about another month," I said carelessly. "Did you think of Liam when you planned all this together with my brother? Why do you ask about the child right away? Would you have hired a housekeeper and paid her extra to look after Liam?" Adriana replied, "What kind of a scary person are you? I thought William was a scoundrel, but he's not. My brother's just a bitter man about life, and I understand him in some ways. But you, it turns out, I don't know you at all, and I'm amazed at myself at the moment. How I could love you and not recognize your petty soul. You'd do anything for money, even sleep with someone you don't love. I ask you not to appeal to my conscience. It won't work. You're not quite right about the money. Your brother doesn't have much, but I'm with him because I care about him. And I care about him a lot. Unlike you," the wife said pompously. "Living here alone, I'll be staying with my parents for a while. And a big request in my absence, do not organize a brothel here. You and William will have that opportunity soon. I promise you that." After this phrase, Michael hastily packed up and left the apartment. At the moment, the man wanted to talk to his parents alone. He wanted to know everything right now. He walked out of the entryway and got into his car and headed to his father's house. As soon as Michael arrived at his dad's house, he asked Benjamin without any preamble about the orphanage and his twin brother. The elderly man nervously grabbed his heart and began to slowly settle to the floor. Michael fearfully helped his father down and immediately called an ambulance. Benjamin was urgently hospitalized with a heart attack. Michael afterward called his mother and asked her to come home immediately. He would not ask his mother anything about his brother over the phone. The man only reported that he'd been admitted to the hospital. Betty promised that she would be on her way home today. Michael was anxiously awaiting his mother's return. He had a lot of questions for his mom. He also didn't know how to start a conversation with his foster mom. The man was worried that Betty would react similarly to his question about the twin brothers and end up in a hospital bed as well. The next day, Betty arrived. She left Michael Liam and herself went to visit her spouse at once in the hospital. Upon her return, the woman was depressed. Michael asked his mother how his father was doing with his health. Betty looked sadly at her son and said that today was much better than yesterday. And then the woman sat down tiredly in a chair and quietly said, "I know you want to know a lot of things from me. My father told me I understand that your twin brother found you and had time to tell you a lot of things. Yes, that's how I got the story from him. Now I'd like to hear it from you. How could it be that one boy was taken and the other left in an orphanage? Son, you just listen to everything. And then I don't blame my father for anything. He had nothing to do with it. Daddy did what I told him to do. You know how much your father loves me and you. He'd drop his pants just to be happy with you and me. Your father and I met when we were still in the first year of study at the Institute and immediately fell in love and soon married. We lived soul to soul, as well as now. Time flew by, and I could not get pregnant. Initially, we were even happy about this circumstance, as we wanted to get an education first, and then to have heirs. But we graduated from the Institute, and I could not get pregnant. A year passed, then another one. And that's when I rang the bells and started pestering polyclinics. I was examined and was told a terrible verdict that I was infertile. It was a terrible shock for me. And I then suggested to my husband to divorce me, as I knew that he wanted to have children. Ethan then called me crazy and said that means we will live for ourselves, and he would not divorce me, as he loves me very much. It's been a few more years. Your father and I went into business, and soon we were doing well. We could live and be happy, but I still felt like an unhappy woman. I felt like some kind of freak. Your father saw perfectly well that I resented myself for not being able to have children, and that's when he offered to take a baby from the orphanage. Initially, I did not even want to hear about it, because I did not believe that I could love someone else's child. However, my husband unobtrusively brought it up once in a while, and at some point I gave in to him, and we went to the orphanage. That's where I noticed you right away. You were standing on the sidelines looking out the window. You had a beaming smile at that moment. I pointed you out to my husband and told him that you would be my son. Ethan smiled and nodded affirmatively. At that moment, the teacher came up to us and told us that you were not alone, but that you had a twin brother. My husband and I looked at each other because we wanted only one baby, not two. And your brother came up to you at that moment. I looked at my husband again and suggested that he take both of them at once. The teacher heard this and asked us to go out into the hallway to talk. As soon as we left the playroom, the child care worker said that your brother has heart problems and anything can happen. And at that moment I said that we don't need a sick child and we will come another time to look for another child. We left. I was in a state of prostration for days. I kept dreaming about you and your smile. I didn't know what to do. That's when I suggested to your father that you be the only boy he could raise. My husband refused at first. He said we couldn't separate the twins, but I was able to convince him that a sick child is too much responsibility, so the second baby would be. It's better if he stays under the supervision of the orphanage staff. And so, before long, we had you. Michael sat in silence after his mother's story. He looked away and thought about something. Betty at the same time looked at her son expectantly, waiting for Michael to speak. After a few minutes had passed, the man looked at his mother and quietly said, "How could the orphanage give you only one twin and leave the other one behind? Son, money makes everything these days. Take my word for it. And in our case, we had a lot of financial help. I know it sounds horrible, but I was afraid to take responsibility for that boy." That's funny. You're speaking for that boy. He's not a boy. He's my own brother, the one you separated me from back in the day. And that boy grew up and became angry at the world, not only at you, but at me. And all these years he's been waiting for me to find him or for you to take him away. Do you have any idea what it was like for me to hear him say that? William grew up hurting and hating me, although it's not my fault. And now he's plotting revenge with my wife. You heard right, my wife Adriana. And they've known each other for quite some time. Were you right? She didn't love me and only married me to live an easy life. But that's not the point now. It's why you lied to me about William being dead. Why did you make me believe it? What was the purpose of it? Son, I'll tell you again, I was afraid of the responsibility of raising a sick child. And about William dying, I thought that since you were separated as children, you'd better forget about him. So I said so. I didn't think that boy would remember you all the time. You were still at an age when childhood memories fade with tears in your eyes, Betty said. As you see, William has those memories. Have they not faded? What did you say? And one more question. Why didn't you report the time when your brother came to see you as a senior in the orphanage? Maybe he should have reached out and apologized to you then. And he probably would have had a very different fate. Muffled, Michael spoke up. I couldn't do that because I was afraid you wouldn't understand me. So I asked William never to come near you. I threatened the boy that if he dared to come near you, I would make his life unbearable. Realize that kids who are raised in an orphanage, they all go down a crooked path. And I was afraid that my brother would have a detrimental effect on you. Sobbing, the woman replied, You ruined his life, just like you ruined mine. Now I understand why you changed your number. It was because William called you from prison and asked for financial support. And you decided to kill two birds with one stone. So you changed your phone number and you got rid of all thoughts of my brother. I never expected that from you. I can't deny I'm grateful to you for raising him. But I can't forgive you for what you did. I can't tell you anything now because I have to decide what I need to do about my brother. At the moment, I will rent an apartment and live with the wall on my own, as I need to put my thoughts in order. Say hello to your father and let him get well. I can't visit him yet either. After these words, Michael left his parents' apartment with his son, leaving his mother there sobbing. The man actually wanted to be alone now to calm his nerves. Michael got into the car with the child and winked, spelled out that they would be single for a while. The same day, the man rented a studio apartment and in the evening drove to his place, where he saw his spouse sweetly chatting with his brother on the phone. The woman looked indifferently at the entering husband, who was holding his son in his arms. Liam, seeing his mother, reached for her. Adriana reluctantly finished talking to her lover. She picked up the baby. Michael, without further ado, picked up the travel bag, and he started to pack the baby's things and his own at the same time. Adriana at this moment indifferently watched her husband's actions. As soon as Michael collected the bag, he called Liam to him. The baby can hardly pronounce words. Asked, and Mom will go with us. No, son, your mom has better things to do. Let's not distract her. You saw how Mommy talked to a client who will be extending eyelashes. The head of the family grinned. Adriana smirked in response and softly spoke. Very funny. Let's get the baby involved in this whole thing. I think you did it yourself when you put your personal life on the line. You can't even talk to your son now. You want us to leave so you can keep talking to William. I want to tell you that you have nothing sacred and no maternal feelings for your son either. If that's all, close the door on the other side, because I have no desire to listen to your moralizing. Not at all. Michael wanted to say something. Then he waved his hand, took Liam's hand, and left the apartment. The man tried not to think about his wife now, so he began to tell his son funny stories. The boy smiled in response, and when his father showed him a cow, the child laughed. Michael, on the way to the rented apartment, stopped by the store and bought dumplings, and soon father and son were already having dinner sitting in the kitchen. Liam tried to tell his father how he and his grandmother spent their leisure time at the resort. Michael tried to listen attentively to the child, but he did not succeed, as his thoughts hovered about his brother. After a while, the man put the pile to bed and himself thought about what he should do next. He didn't think about the fact that his brother could hurt him. He just didn't believe it. Michael wanted to make William thaw in his heart and stop hating the whole world. The man was only able to fall asleep when he awoke to the sound of Liam moving through him. Michael glanced at the clock. It was 9 o'clock. The man shook his head unsatisfactorily to work. He was late, and then he looked at his son, winked at him, and informed him, "Today, dear friend, we do worldly things and then get into work mode. By the way, I want to inform you that for breakfast we will have dumplings again, and we will have lunch in a cafe. And for dinner, can Daddy make you something? What do you want to eat?" "Fried potatoes," says the boy. "You got it. I'll make fried potatoes tonight. Now, let's eat quickly, and then to the kindergarten, so that I can take you there tomorrow, and then to my work, so that everything is clear on the spot after the cafe and shopping for provisions. After all, potatoes should be cooked from potatoes," Father said with a laugh. The next day, Michael took Liam to the kindergarten and went to work. Soon his mother called him and asked him tearfully to come and see his father. Betty said that she had told Papa about their conversation, and Benjamin became very nervous and worse. Michael, holding back his irritation, said, "Mom, why did you do that? You know perfectly well that Father mustn't be disturbed now, and you're just adding fuel to the fire. Do you really want your father to die early?" "Son, what are you talking about? I love your father, and I love you too. It's just that Ethan knows me well, and he got the whole conversation out of me word for word." Crying, Betty replied, "Okay, Mom, calm down. I'll be at Dad's in an hour. Just please, can we talk to him alone? It'll be easier for me without you, and Dad too. I promise I won't worry him any more soon." Michael was already sitting at his father's side in the chair beside the bed. The young man looked at his father and thought, "How can a man get so old in a couple days?" Benjamin put his hand on his son's arm and patted it lightly, then said softly, "You've had to hear a lot from your mother. I understand how hard it is for you. But believe me, it's hard for a mother right now, twice as hard. I'm very worried about her. She's the one who looks so strong, and in reality, a weak woman, not pushing her away. You can see now that I'm not a very good protector. My only hope is for you to believe in what we did to her. It's a great offense and God will punish us yet, but I would very much like to take the punishment myself, and I'd like to protect your mother from it, because I love that woman so much. Daddy, I'm having a hard time. I promised my mother I wouldn't worry you, but I don't want to deceive you either. For the time being, I need to cool down, and only then I can be myself. See, I'm being honest with you about everything. Man to man, I need to figure things out for myself, and most importantly, I need to get along with William. He's my brother. Well done, son. You said the right thing about your brother, and I believe you can do it. And you know, you've made me feel better. And about Adriana, get her out of your head. She's not worthy to be your wife. You'll find happiness on your way. I only have one request. Don't leave Adriana the baby. She doesn't need Liam. Yes, I think you know that yourself. I know it as well as I do, Father. And you get some tea and get well soon. Your grandson's been asking about you. I'll visit my mother one of these days. How are things at home?" the son said, and gave his father a friendly pat on the arm. Leaving the room, Michael suddenly felt relieved to talk to his father. He himself did not realize why it had happened. The man drove to work after the hospital, then picked up his son from daycare. And when he arrived at the rented apartment, he thought about it. He watched the child playing with a steam train and mentally envied the kid that he did not have such problems as he had. Michael was distracted from his thoughts by a phone call. He looked at the display and saw an unfamiliar number. The man answered and immediately recognized the voice of his brother, who asked when they would meet. Michael, without hesitation, replied that the day after tomorrow. William clarified exactly where the meeting would take place, and the interlocutor answered him, "I think it will be on neutral territory. You know, I have long promised my son to go to the zoo. There we'll see the animals and talk. How's that sound? By the way, don't forget to bring Adriana along. She's not the last hero in this story, and she's not the only one involved. Who are you going to be with? Are you going to bring a support group in the form of police officers? William said with a grin. You're wrong. I'll be with my son. I want to tell you one thing on the phone, that I'm going to meet you to bury the hatchet. Think about it at your leisure. The next day, Michael, as promised to his father, stopped by his mother, who, seeing her son, immediately threw herself on her knees in front of him. The old woman, sobbing, asked for forgiveness. Michael helped Betty to her feet and asked her to calm down. Your mother's sobs were all your mother said. Forgive me, I'm so sorry for you. Mom, you're saying it wrong. Your guilt is more for my brother. You should apologize to him first. But I think you might get the chance, but it'll depend on William. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. What are you going to talk about? You don't know anything about each other. Betty said, puzzled. That will be the topic of conversation. William will talk about himself, and I'll talk about me. He and I need to make up for lost time. You just hang in there, and more than once. At the appointed hour, Michael stood at the zoo gate, holding his son's hand. He was waiting for his brother and his wife, and soon Adriana's car stopped near them. William got out of it. The men said hello, and after a few minutes Adriana came up to them and parked the car not far away. The three adults and the child followed past the zoo gate, and Michael was the first to speak. Brother, I know you're upset with me, but you realize it wasn't my fault. I've talked to my mother and father about it. They honestly admitted that they were young, not then, and were afraid to take you from the orphanage because you had a heart condition. But that's a separate story. That's not what we're talking about right now. Don't pull the cat out of the bag and start with the main point. I want the main point. I have no desire to go and look at animals. William said with a sneer, I'll get to the point. You're angry that fate has dealt you everything. But you are not right about that. A man is the blacksmith of his own happiness. For example, have you done nothing to achieve anything in life? Said the calm Michael. Stop. Are you trying to lecture me now? Roughly interrupted William brother. Absolutely not. I have a proposition for you. Well, look, I have 2 outlets, and they're pretty well promoted, and I'm giving them to you. It's all gonna be done legally and legally. Adriana has a car, so you'll keep the car. Now we have to figure out a place to live. I have a 1-bedroom apartment. I could leave it to you, but Liam and I need a place to live too. There's a little problem here, and I don't know what to do. I'd like to hear your options. What's there to decide? Adriana intervened in the conversation. The men turned to the woman, who continued to say, Michael, you can move to your parents because they have a 3-bedroom, so you have somewhere to live. Adriana, I'm used to living on my own. I can only offer to exchange the 2-bedroom for 2 1-bedrooms. I'll make the extra payment myself. Michael said, there's no need for an exchange. Adriana exclaimed businesslike. The brothers looked at the young woman again. She, in turn, shrugged her shoulders and spoke. William has a 1-bedroom apartment that the state gave him when he came out of the orphanage. But it's in the middle of nowhere. So Michael can have it. And we'll stay in the 2-bedroom that you've officially registered to me. How's that sound? Well, you're a woman of fire, said William admiringly. And then he added, you've got a super brain in your head. I picked the right woman for me. Well, let it be as you decide. We'll take care of all this business in a couple days. And now I'm turning to you, William. Can you burn the anger out of your heart and forgive my parents? Believe me, they're so sorry for what they've done, and they're having a hard time. My dad is in the hospital having a seizure because of this whole situation. I know your parents will be on their knees begging you for what they did. I wish you could find the strength to forgive them. I am ready to take off the last of my pants and give them to you, just to thaw your heart. And I say that with a pure heart. How easy is it for you? You know how they say, a little money and all the years are gone. I can't do that, unfortunately. And what do you want me to do in this case? William said in a hoarse voice with excitement. I didn't say it was easy. But you see, if you and I have already met, perhaps this is our chance to be brotherly friends, not sworn enemies. Don't you realize that anyone can make a mistake, but you can't just go straight to the gutter? Yes, my parents made a terrible mistake, but they regret it. Just give them a chance. I can't promise you anything. I need time, said the interlocutor glumly. Michael smiled at the same time. William looked at the twin with surprise and said, "What did I say that was so funny?" "Nothing, really. Nothing. It's just that you're saying exactly what I said to your father the other day, that you need time. You have almost all the same words and the same intonation as me. Apparently, Adriana has done a good job of molding you into me." His brother smiled. The adults laughed, and Michael thought that William might be able to get over himself and forgive Betty and Benjamin about Adriana after a while. Michael had a very different thought. In his opinion, this one had. The girl would always prioritize money over feelings. He even at the same moment realized that he had completely cooled Adriana, and it made him feel even better. In the evening of the same day, Michael went to his father and told him everything. Papa shook hands with his son and said that he had done the right thing and asked him to visit his mother. Michael did not resist and was happy to do so. After the hospital, he went with his son to his mother's house, where he also told her about the reconciliation with his brother. Betty, hearing the news, said the son hugged his mother and softly said no need to cry anymore. Everything is in the past. Now only time is needed for everyone to calm down a bit. You, mother, have often told me that time heals. So it should happen in our case. The important thing is to believe it. You can't go back to the past. You have to live in the present. The important thing is that William doesn't go down the wrong road, because he's had a lot of things in his life he shouldn't have. Son, I will obey your brother, and it's up to him to forgive me or not. But know, my dear, that I love you more than life, and I will try to love William as well. I know that God will punish me and my father. Ethan told me so. But your father has already been punished by the Almighty because he had a heart attack. It's my turn next, and I'll take it with dignity. Don't be silly. It's just that Daddy has a weak heart, and no one has punished him. And no one will punish you. We'll be all right. Now feed me and my grandson. We're hungry as wolves. I suggest even in honor of this to run to the store and buy a huge cake to celebrate such an event. It's not every day that brothers reconcile after all these years apart. And you know, Mom, William does look just like me. The man laughed, and Betty laughed too. Liam looked at the grown-ups uncomprehendingly and laughed merrily too.